Hi guys. So a couple of months back, I watched the movie RRR, and man, was I absolutely floored. What an amazing achievement that was. Now, being Indian, I'm well aware of all the trash that gets churned out of the Indian film industries every year. So it was such a delight to see them get it absolutely perfect. All the elements of Indian cinema all in one movie come together just perfectly. And after that, I kind of got absorbed into this whole RRR thing. I'd go check out all the reviews and the reactions online and all the love and appreciation that this movie's got from all over the world, especially in America. So this movie obviously has its fan following. It's a cult classic now. And to do my part, I decided that I'll make this video, and it's just to fill in the blanks for all English speakers or Western audiences, especially American, Canadian audiences, to appreciate the movie better, to get a better understanding of like cultural nuances that you would have missed, some traditions, customs, some ways of speech, and other things about like ancient epic Indian history, colonial Indian history, and of course, there's so many other things that were simply just lost in translation. So this is the effort from my side, is so that you can get a more wholesome understanding and appreciation for this fantastic movie, the greatest epic action drama ever. So just a bit about myself. My name is Garvit. I am an Indian, a Canadian living based in Toronto, and I am not a movie buff. I used to love movies as a kid growing up, but I think as of late, with all the trash, garbage being doled out, it's just most of it is not watchable for me. I grew up watching a lot of Hollywood action movies, which I loved. It's my favorite genre. But like from Hollywood, what's the last great action movie they made? I think maybe Gladiator. I mean, you'd think Fury Road was close, but then again, like, do I need to see a 9 month pregnant lady get under the tires of a vehicle? And did you see it? Did you not? Like, who cares? I mean, what a stupid thing to put in there. But anyways, besides that, and you'd wonder, like, why can't they just make movies like these epic action movies like in the 80s? Why can't they just make them again like that? Just full on entertaining. And then one person told me, no, it's never going to happen now. It's never going back. And I was like, you're being rather nihilistic. And he's like, no, it's because everything happens for a reason. It's being done on purpose. It's not going to go back. And that was until RRR. I mean, RRR is just so wholesome, pure, clean, entertaining. It's just such a good movie. It can be watched and enjoyed by any man, woman, child, anywhere in the world. And I bet you 100 years from now, this movie is going to be watched and enjoyed just the same as it is right now. So without further ado, let's get into this deep dive of exploring RRR. Needless to say, spoilers galore.
RRR, or is it triple R? Because let's face it, RRR is not easy to say. And I found some interviews with the people behind it, and they actually call it triple R.
Triple R.
Triple R.
I like that.
It is RRR or triple R, as the kids are saying it. That's what they're calling it.
That's a slang, huh?
Okay, so what is it? Is it RRR or triple R? And why is there confusion? And why do we have these two different names? It is a slang. What is it? So look at this number on your screen right here, right? So for Americans, you're going to say it's 50009. But an average Indian, he'll say it's 50009. It's just the way we talk. It's just the way Indians speak, and it's the way it gets absorbed easy in the mind also. This number here, if an Indian tells you he's going to say 1448889, an American's going to listen to that and say, hey, what do you say? No, but it's 1448889. I mean, if you say this to an Indian, he won't even blink. It's just the way numbers are said. It's the way speech is said. And in case you're interested, if you have this number here, it's going to be 1555559. It's not going to be quad, penta, hexa, nothing of the sort. It just goes to double and triple. See, so now when it comes to alphabets, however, it's 50-50, you can say, because some people will say triple R, some people will say RRR. It's simply because there's not that many opportunities to see like three similar alphabets one after the other. Like, how often do you see like D, 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 or like Y, Y, Y? So that's why people are, even in India, they'll call it RRR or triple R. However, as in like, have a look at this video here. Yeah, so in India, no one's ever going to ask you to spell triple R. At least that won't happen. But I get it.
Say again, what is the name?
Triple R. You can just search it up on Google.
How do you spell that?
Triple R. R.
Oh, triple R. I see.
Okay, so next we see this pretty girl, and her name is Mully. Mully. So it's an excellent choice of name, just in case you didn't know, but it is exactly cognate to Molly in the English language. Mully and Molly are the same name, exactly the same name. And I'll tell you why. Actually, Molly is cognate to Mary. Again, Molly and Mary are the same names because R's and L's are the most confused sound syllable, I think, for the human tongue. Like if you've seen that movie Lost in Translation, they send a Japanese hooker to Jim Murray, right? And she's like, lip my socks. And he's like, lip my socks. And she's like, yeah, lip my socks, you know? So it's that kind of thing. So actually Molly and Mary is the same thing. And Mully actually denotes flower, okay, in India. And it's the same with Mary. That's why you have like rosemary and you have marigold. And then that's where you get Marie from, and it all goes back. So basically, just a good choice of name, just letting you know, Mully and Molly are exactly the same name. Okay, so in the next shot, we see these stags being brought, right? So these stags, the one with the antlers, they are called Barasingha. Okay, it translates to like water deer or swamp deer. And in 1920, and before the British arrived, so these were found like all over the subcontinent, all the way from Afghanistan almost to Burma and south to the Deccan to where this place is, Adilabad, right? By the time they left, they are practically endangered. They were practically endangered. Now there are only about 2,000 left. They're only found in some pockets in North India. So the forests depicted here, like you won't find this animal there anymore. And again, this is just like one of the first depictions of, you can call it the horrors of colonialism, or whenever a subjugating force is there, they're going to try to destroy the local environment, ecology, because they know that's the backbone of, you know, the people who have to subsist on that, on these animals for, you know, food and for whatever. So this is quite similar, actually. The scene has some similarities to Dances with Wolves, like where Kevin Costner and the team of those Indian chiefs and everyone, they go and see the whole ground with all the carcasses of the American buffalo. It's pretty much the same concept here. So anyways, just putting this out there. And okay, now this one is a very interesting scene, actually. This is the first time my eyebrows were raised. I'm like, maybe this movie is up to something. So what we see here is Mully's mother, Loki, that's her name here, and she is actually pleading the wheel. She is literally talking to the wheel. And that is exactly what would happen if there's a person who has no idea of mechanization, has never seen machines, probably never seen a car, never been inside one for sure, has no idea how it works or anything. They actually would believe, because the only thing that's moving on that vehicle is the wheel, and they actually think that might be the life force. I'll tell you something how I know this. Now, growing up in India, you have a lot of stray dogs, right? And it's very common that, you know, when you're driving your car, these dogs will just keep chasing the car and keep barking, right? And I'm sure even in America, it probably happens in some rural areas, or used to at least. So the funny thing is, if you observe these dogs, they're not shouting, they're not barking at the driver or the passengers or the windows or anything. They're always barking at the wheel. They're literally talking to the wheel, because that's exactly what they think, the life force. That's the driving force. That's the only thing moving. It's precisely the same thing. I mean, this is actually, it's kind of poignant too, but it's very realistic, because if you go in like a tribal place, now there are no people like this who don't know about cars anymore, but in 1920, yeah, you could imagine that that kind of a thing would have happened. So that was pretty good. Pretty cool. Okay, so this is the value of a bullet scene, right? And honestly, there's probably nobody in India who hasn't heard this dialogue before. It's a very common theme, and I'm like, oh, there we go again. You know what? Value of a bullet. You know what? Like in Indian movies, you'll hear like the villain saying it to the hero, "You're not worth the bullet in my gun." The hero saying it to the villain. Random people are saying it to random people ad nauseum. Like, you know, everyone's heard of this dialogue. You know, "You're not worth the bullet in my gun." And you'd think, because I watched Hollywood movies too, they never have this. And I'm like, why is it that only Indian movies have all these like weird things? And I thought maybe it's an Asian thing, but then I saw some reactions of like people from Korea and stuff, and they're also like, this is interesting, value of a bullet. So it's not like a Asian or Eastern thing either. It's just a very endemic to Indian thing, and you'd wonder where all this comes from, and it doesn't even make sense, right? Like, fine, if the guy's life is not worth the value of a bullet, but what's the value of a bullet to you, man? Just like shoot him and kill him, man. Let's get over with it. But no, it's always got to be there. And this is the movie. This is like when you start wondering, why do we have all these weird dialogues in our movies? Where did we get all this information, and why are we like this? Like, and that's when you start realizing. Now, it has happened that there's been a person, an older gentleman, who did tell me once in India that, yeah, the British, they used to say that you're not worth the bullet, in the gun, and then whatever people would have to be killed some other way or something. And you know what my first thought was? I'm like, Uncle, you've been watching too many movies. Honestly, that's what I thought at the time. But no, I think so. This movie actually exposes a lot of oral history. See, so in India, you have a lot of written history, and then you have all these oral histories, right? That just get passed down about how things used to be. And so definitely that is a British thing. They must have done it, because that's the only reason why it's only in India that people talk like this. Nowhere else, like in the world, has anyone heard this weird dialogue that you're not worth the value of a bullet. So it probably did happen. I'm sure it didn't happen a lot, but even if it happened like 1% of the time over like 150, 200 years, that adds up to quite a bit. But anyway, just wanted to add that, just tell you that this concept of like value of the bullet is not a new dialogue in Indian cinema. It's pretty cliche dialogue in Indian cinema, but just seeing it from a different perspective. So that was interesting. Okay, so this is where we hear that word brown rubbish, and immediately a lot of the reactions and reviews are like, oh God, that's so racist and this and that. Just to let you know that racism, like, it's not a word that is available in any Indian language. It simply doesn't exist. And I don't think Indians truly understand what racism is. So what they do is they try to create new words in like Hindi. It comes to mean color discrimination, but that's not understood in India either, because they're people of all colors. In fact, in the same family, you'll have people of different skin tones. Personally, as an Indian, do I think there's any racism as such in this movie? I don't see it like that. It's just a subjugating force, and they're British, and the people are Indians, and they can say whatever they want. And I'm sure they had different terms. If they were in Hong Kong, they'd say something else. In Ireland, they'd say something else. In Africa, they'd say something else. They're just going to say what they have to say. So yeah, I just don't think a lot of Indians also like look at racism as such. They don't really understand it, but I get it. Like in the American context, a lot of reactions of the Americans and the reviews are like there's a lot of racism. But yeah, to each his own. Like, but yeah, from an Indian perspective, I don't really look at racism in this movie. It's just not there for me.
I want to know how much they bought the kid for.
Okay, so that's a good question. Like, how much money was actually paid for the girl, or whatever? How much money was just thrown? Okay, so let's just understand a bit about currencies very quickly. Okay, so in 1920, the Indian rupee was a silver coin. The British pound was the same silver coin. That's why it's called pound sterling, right? He even says that sterling means silver. And the American dollar was also a silver coin. It used to be called the silver dollar. So the rupee, Indian rupee, the pound, and the American dollar had the same denomination, same exchange, swap, everything was the same, okay? So now if we zoom in to this coin here, you'll see 1/4, and you won't be able to see what's after that. It's not 1/4 rupee, so it's not like 25 cents. It's actually 1/4 of an anna. So an anna is 6 paisa. Basically, it's the old system, like where you had 6 pence. So it's 1/4 of 6 paisa, which is also 1/4 of 6 cents, because everything was exchangeable. It's all silver based. So each of those coins is 1.5 paisa, or 1.5 cents. And they're both the same coins, because this is 1905. You can see the year on it. Even the other coin has like, I think that's Edward VI or something. That was the king at the time. 1905. So yeah, basically. So if you want your answer of how much they actually paid for the girl, it is 1.5 plus 1.5. That is 3 cents American, 1920.
I want to know how much they bought the kid for.
It's probably 2 cents. It's crazy.
Yeah, so it's not 2 cents, it's 3 cents. Now, going by the movie itself, if you want to know how much was 3 paisa in those days, so we have a scene in which that little kid, who they finally have to rescue, he says, I'll get you a fresh fish if you give me 1 ana. He says, now I know that in the subtitles it doesn't come out like that. They don't say that. They just say, give me some money. But he actually says, ki ek tazi machhi pakad ke lata hu, ek ana dena. That means I'll get you fresh fish. Give me 1 ana. So he's saying for 6 paisa, you can get a fresh fish. So that's pretty much what the cost of, items were in those days. So they basically got the girl for like the price of maybe a small fish, or like half a fish or something like that. Okay. Okay, so that portrait that gets knocked off, that's King George V. Now, the thing is that like 100 years ago, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, but like king and queen was just more than just a symbol. Like they really looked at them as if they're gods. Like it used to be in England or Britain, they would be like for God and country, and then that got replaced to like king and country for queen and country. So when that portrait gets knocked off, I mean it's obviously just a knee-jerk reaction. It just comes out naturally. It's like arrest that man, you know. But today things have obviously changed. I don't think they look upon the king and queen as some kind of divine saviors in the way they used to. Probably now if somebody knocked off a portrait like that, it might be like, give that man a raise. I mean, like, who knows? It might be a little different. Okay, so honestly, like, I did not know either of these two main protagonists before. I never saw any of their movies. I didn't even know how they looked. I didn't even know who they were. Because as I told you, I don't really watch too many movies, and yeah, and most of them were trash anyway. So these two are like South Indian, and like I'm from North India, so I didn't even know anything about them. But first time you see this guy here, now this look. Now, if you ask a traditional Indian artist to draw a portrait of what he visualizes as the ideal warrior prince look would be, that would be the look. I kid you not. Okay, so now let's talk about this epic landscape. Okay, so firstly, like I've heard some of the reviewers or the reactions, people think it's a desert. No, it's not a desert. It's a dusty plains. And this is on the west side of Delhi. Now you're going to see two sides of Delhi, okay? The west side and the east side. The east side is green. And 100 years ago, yes, there were forests. There still are, but much less now because of all the urbanization. So the east side of Delhi is actually green, forested, and the west side is just a dusty plain. So like when you see like these two contrasting things, it's not just for dramatic value. He just added it in there without thinking. No, it's all very geographic. It all falls in place perfectly. So let's talk a bit about the west side of Delhi. Now this stretch of land, okay, from Delhi to about 150 kilometers to the west, or maybe 200 kilometers or 150 kilometers to the west, it's got this dry, dusty look to it. It's exactly as they've shown it here. And I have to give kudos to the director for doing such a great job. And literally, he's like absolutely like picturized the lay of the land perfectly. So this area has seen the most amount of bloody warfare that any region has seen in the history of mankind. And I'm not joking. It's about like west of Delhi, about 150 kilometers, this dry, dusty plains. It was seen the brunt of all the Islamic jihadic invasions. Before that, it was like the Huns, the Scythians, and I'm not talking cannon fire and bullets and bombs and grenades. No, this is mano mano. This is hand to hand, literally like, skulls getting, cracked open and like limbs getting hacked, people getting hacked, beheaded, decapitated. This region actually has, and then even before that, it saw a local civil war in about 1500 BC. Same region, same place. It's quoted in the Rig Veda. It's called the Dashranya Yuddh, the Battle of the Ten Kings. That was 1500 BC. But even before that, in about 3100 BC, this was the same place, the same lay of the land, the same look, where the greatest civil war in the history of mankind was fought. And that's called the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata. Now you might have heard of it. It's one of the greatest Indian epics. In fact, I think it's by far the biggest epic like ever written. And in fact, India's own name, like India is a name that's used by outsiders, but like Indians internally, they'll call India as Bharat. It's the same thing from Mahabharata. So that's when like armies from all over the subcontinent they got together and then they really had a big fight here. And yeah, so we'll talk a little more about Mahabharata. It will come now and then because it's an ancient epic, and there are some things that the director has taken from that. But kudos, like the way he has just for a South Indian director to get the lay of the land so right. And in every Indian movie, no matter where it's shot, if they ever want to portray a battle scene, they'll always look for a terrain like this. It has to be dusty, hard, dryish land. And I guess it's the same in Hollywood too, because like those westerns, and if you look at like the Mad Max movies, they give a different kind of feeling, right? When it comes to like like action movies, they give a more hearty feeling about it. So there's something about this kind of land. And like I've lived in this area for quite a bit, like so. In fact, I was actually born in this area. I mean, my father was posted there. I'm not actually from this place, but and then like this scene here, like when the cattles and the cow come in, like so it's called dhul mitti, like the dust and the dirt, and like with the cattle, I can literally smell it. It's so invigorating. I love it. I can't lie. So, anyways, I just wanted to say that this is one epic introduction, character introduction, and it's an amazing recreation of the lay of the land. This is the dusty plains of, West Delhi. They have a lot of history in it. There's so much bloody warfare and so much bloodshed, it's unimaginable. But, anyways, just wanted to put it out there.
No gun. Just goes in with a baton. No gun. Look at this. He's
all he had was a stick. Yes.
Okay, well, he has to only go out with a stick, Firstly, it has to be a fair fight. And the other thing is, these guys come from like very reputed, film families and all. Like both their fathers, both NTR and Ramcharan, both their fathers are huge superstars back in the day in India. So yeah, they can't be shown mowing down people with an automatic rifle, killing innocent people. That would be a serious CLM, like it's a career limiting move. Now, one of the very peculiar things about this movie is that the director has a pulse in your, like, he knows exactly where your mind is at and what you're looking for next. Now, as an Indian, like when you're watching this, right? And this guy's obviously been introduced as a traitor, and I know he's not going to die, but I'm like still watching it. And in my mind, like the first time, I'm like, somebody get a brick and smash his head in. And then they give it to you. That's exactly what happens. That is, again, just phenomenal. He has a pulse. He knows exactly where the pulse is at, everybody, what they're thinking, what they want, and you're going to get it. Excellent. Okay, here, so like, can you see like that little symbol that he's got on his neck or on his chain that he's wearing? So that symbol, that's called Om, okay? So it's the most sacred, you can call it symbol or chant, okay, in all of India, or in traditional Indian, or in Hinduism, which is basically traditional Indian. That's what Hinduism is. So what is Om? So like you guys have it right in Christianity, and I don't know too much, but there's something to the effect that God breathed life in the into the world, or God said the word, right? So that is the word. The word he said is Om. And as a matter of fact, even like the English word him, it's actually cognate to Om, right? Because H actually doesn't have a pronunciation in most Latin languages. It's only in English they changed it. This was done. And Y used to be a vowel, which is again very iffy. So that's actually Om. Him is Om. In fact, the word human, and this is actually coming from a British, what's the term? The philosophy guys like who go into ancient stuff. So I saw this on YouTube actually. It's a very, very reputed British person. He's saying that the word human is also cognate to Om actually. Yeah, so humanity actually, like in Italian, it's literally omnita. Okay, that's how it's just said. It's the human, I think, is Om in most other, I'm not sure, but in European language, you can check it out. But it literally in Sanskrit, it'll translate to the way of Om. It's like almost the way of God. Human doesn't have anything to do with man, though. It just the MAN in human and the MAN of man are completely different roots. They come from totally different places. Humans got nothing to do with man. I don't even think human has anything to do with human beings. I think animals are more humane. I think it's just that it just turned out that way. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say. That symbol there on his neck, like if anyone's interested and you wanted to learn about like what that is, so that's just a sacred symbol. It's Om. It spells Om, and it is what in traditional Indian knowledge systems is the thing that is what God said to create the universe. Okay, so in this scene, we're introduced to the Nizam of Hyderabad. So that's a special advisor coming from the Nizam or the Nizam of Hyderabad. So the Nizam is basically a administrative head in the state of Hyderabad. So that state, that's where you can see it in this map here actually, was not ruled by the British. It was ruled by a different person. He's a Muslim ruler. But the thing is, he was a complete stooge to the British. So that's, again, it just shows you how the colonialists sometimes play games, right? So it's called divide and rule. So what they'll do is sometimes they'll have different kings and just different like rulers, and they'll say, hey, it's not really us, but everything is being controlled by through proxy, right? So like if you see all the ostentation or like all the opulence that the British had, well, the Nizam of Hyderabad was actually the richest person in the world by far, like back then. Like he was the richest person hands down in the world. So imagine how much he looted. Okay, so this is a scene where we're first introduced to the word Gond, right? That's where we find out that the child that they got from the Adilabad forest is a Gond child. So what is a Gond? Okay, so now I know that in the subs they've been referred to as a tribe, and they're tribals. And in the Western mind, the moment you're hearing tribals, you're going to think, okay, they all live in the forest, and to some extent, yeah, some of them do, but the word is not actually tribe in Hindi. It's called jati, and in India, it kind of refers more like a clan or even a group of clans. And there are millions of Gonds, okay, all over India, and they're just doing normal jobs and stuff. So if you ever like meet a Gond, don't expect him to like know how to capture a tiger or like make you some herbal medicine or something like that. Of course, there are some that live in the forests too, and yeah, in 1920 probably there were more living in the forests, right? Because back then, like most people would just avoid the cities because they were generally dens of like traders and oppressors there. So people just prefer to live like in hinterland. So yeah, the thing is, yeah, so whenever you think Gon, just don't think like he's a tribal who can like do all these things that you're seeing in this. It's almost like, you meet a Japanese guy and you're like, yeah, Mr. Miyagi, no karate. It's something like that. It's not like that. They're just normal people doing normal jobs. It's a very big clan. There are millions of them, and they live all over India in different places. So that's that. But let's talk a little more about Gons. So okay, so here's a photo. Okay, this guy, his name is Dr. Edward Seuss, yeah, and he's not the green eggs and ham Dr. Seuss. Okay, he's a geologist, Austrian geologist, late 19th century, and he's one of the front runners for the continental drift theory. Okay. So the thing is that in the Vedas, that's the ancient Indian texts, scientific texts, right? It's mentioned that the Gonds are considered one of the most ancient tribes or clans ever in the world, right? And it's said that the forest of the Gonds, like when all the Earth's masses were together, all the continents were in one place, the center of that, okay, was the forest of the Gonds, okay? So now what's interesting is that now this Dr. Edward Seuss, he never came to India, but he got his hands on this, translated some text about the Vedas, which had this. So he actually started what we now know as the continental drift theory, which purports that there was a long time ago that all the land masses were together, okay? And look at the first name that was given for that. It was called Gondwana land, Gondwana land. So the Gond is directly from the Gond. What he was actually interpreting there, it's Gond Van. Van means forest. It literally, so Gond Van means the forest of the Gond. So in English it comes as Gondwana, but it's actually Gond Van. So the first, like even the continental drift theory actually supports this, that the first people were probably the Gonds, and they were at the center of this massive land structure, which was called Gondwana land, which literally translates to the land of the forest of the Gonds. Okay, just an interesting thing to point out there. Yeah, I know, and some people are going to say, oh, but aren't the first people supposed to be from Africa and stuff like that? Well, I don't know. That's not what the Vedas say. Okay, so here's our first introduction to the tiger. It's a majestic animal. And no, it's not dangerous to humans. In fact, humans are neither its prey nor predator. The only reason it's attacking this guy is because he's doused himself in blood. So he's acting like a prey here. But the thing about tigers also, it has a very horrific past in the colonial era, British era. So before the British came, there were upwards of 200,000 tigers. And by the time they left, there were less than 2,000. So they literally wiped out 99%, more than 99% of all tigers in India. And the thing is that in traditional Indian knowledge systems, like traditionally, the tiger is the wealth and health of a forest is correlated directly to the number of tigers it has. So if the tigers die, then a lot of species start dying. Like we don't even know like the importance of every animal and ecology and what environmental roles they play, but all like animals and other animals suffer, and lots of plant species suffer. So it's just one of the things. So once again, it's like the standard. The colonial system is that they gotta like kill the tigers. So that's going to deprive people. It's going to basically make the forests less healthy and the people also less healthy, and they'll be, less able to resist. Yeah, and the other thing is like when the British Raj, like the British officers went hunting for tigers, there was no honor in the sense that it's not like, you get a tag and then you go to the bush and, you spend 3 days in the cold and in one place and then you finally get your shot and, you feel a bit proud and there is some sense of achievement. That's not how tiger hunting happened in India. The way it was is that you'd have like a few British officers or even like Indian Raj officers or whoever they're, and whoever in cahoots with the British. And they'd be in one place, maybe on an elephant, and then they'd have hundreds of people, with drums. And so all the tigers would come into one place, and then they just pick them off. Like it was not hunting in the traditional sense. It's not as if like they went into or spend their time in a tree or in a mashan or like somewhere and like waited and nothing of the sort. It's just like literally getting hundreds of people with drums, and they're just like banging away, and all the tigers would just come into one central spot and then just pick them off like easy cheesy. So that's basically that's how tigers were killed. They killed about, I'd say, 2,000 tigers a year, and then the way it was done is that British officers would get paid to kill a tiger. Like they'd pay them a lot of money. So it was literally like we talk of poaching. This is like tiger genocide, which is sanctioned by the state. Like you're getting paid a lot of money to get a tiger skin. So these guys would just get tiger skins. Maybe they get sold or whatever, but in European markets and all that, people would want them as like fashionable items in their dressing rooms and whatever, but drawing rooms. But the point is that it was like poaching in a very organized manner, like very very organized. So about 2,000 a year that kill nonstop, and I've seen photos like of like 2 rows of tigers just like that after a hunting party. Like you can literally count 20-25 tigers like in that. I've seen photos like that. So anyways, now if you go to Wikipedia, they'll give you some nonsensical number like there were way more tigers like that than the British. At the time British left, no, that number is highly exaggerated. The real number is about 1,500. About 1,500, I'd say, yeah. So my father was in the Indian Forest Service, so I know quite a few things about this. And it's not like the Indian government's done a lot. Like right now, India just has like about 3,000. It's like barely any improvement. But then again, I think a lot of its habitation has also been destroyed, so tigers can't roam. Like traditionally in India, tigers could roam from, like, say, Delhi to Calcutta, because the whole Ganges was, the whole Ganga, that's the big river, was basically all forested. But now I guess they can't. Okay, so just letting you know, tigers do get a lot of bad rap as being dangerous to humans and all. That's not true. And it's a very sad history that they've had in the colonial era. Very, very sad.
That's all that's holding it? Oh, catch it, yes!
Okay, so this is an interesting one. So a lot of questions came up in a lot of reactions, is that why not use a bigger post? Why are you using such a small post? And I understand people are like, hey, okay, but they were expecting a wolf, but it's a tiger. Yeah, but you'd still think, why not just use a bigger post? Just put an iron post in there, or just like whatever. Why would you use something that's going to break like this? So I think we need to understand a little more about how the trapping works. So if you look at this entire trapping sequence, what you're going to see is that they have a boulder on top, okay? And what was expected is that boulder comes down as counterweight, and that's heavier than the wolf. The wolf is supposed to be suspended in air. It's not supposed to be on the ground. Even if a wolf has its feet on the ground, it can break through that trap, cut through the net, because once it has traction for the floor or on the ground, then it can like jump and it can create a lot of impulse. That's what they call it, like, which can suddenly stretch the system. So the system is not even designed for any animal to have its feet on the ground. It's supposed to be suspended, right? And once it's suspended, you can swing, but you can't increase the tension or the stress on anything, right? So it was pretty safe. It's more like, yeah, it wasn't even supposed to be anywhere near, actually. It's surprising that tiger didn't like break through the entire system faster, right? So now clearly you can see the difference in the weight of the tiger and the wolf. Like, look at the difference in the size. It looks like maybe 10 times or something. In weight, it could be like the wolf might just be 50, 60 kgs, man. This tiger could be like, I don't know, 400 kilos. I don't know. So clearly we can see that when the tiger comes, he does throw the boulder down and it does do something. You see the tiger gets a little uppish movement, like when it's climbing, it goes up a bit. But because its weight is way more than that boulder, its feet are on the ground, and that's why it starts tearing through the system. And now the other thing is, even then, why wouldn't you just put an iron rod in there? The thing is, it doesn't matter anymore, because the way mechanical systems work, they follow the concept of like, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So they make everything is supposed to be roughly the same stress point, and that's why you see it like, if either the post is going to go, or the rope is going to go, or the net is going to go. There's no point of having it's like having a steel rod in there. It's just saying that having a steel link in a plastic chain. What use is that? It's not going to work. And that's exactly what happened. You see that when Bhima actually holds it together, the rope snaps, right? And that's what you would expect. Something is going to go. Like, it's you're making a car do a truck's job. So that's that. So it's not about having a stronger thing. I think what most people missed is the way traps work. The trap is not supposed to allow the animal to even be on the ground. He's supposed to be suspended in the air. And it's like, for holding up a weight of like 60 kgs, it's nothing like that. That's way more over engineered than you need. But yeah, the thing completely changed. So that's all.
Oh, did they bring the tiger with them?
I think so.
Is that what that was?
He said that I needed you. Yep.
I thought it meant like to eat.
Yeah, just to be clear, nobody eats tiger in India. That's absolute sin.
It's like Commando.
Yeah, he's getting all ready to go.
Getting like all geared up.
Okay, so this isn't like commando war paint. This is actually called surma. It's a Muslim tradition. Like the Muslims in India, it's just kohl. Okay, whatever kohl is, you can ask any girl or lady. She'll tell you what kohl is. It's the Muslims, they put it like down here. I'm not sure if it's a fashion statement, or does it have some properties like for whatever, helping out for the skin or the eyes. I'm not sure, but I think it's just I think it's more like just fashion. That's all. Okay, so this is interesting. Like, this is the first shot we get of Bhim playing Akhtar, right, as a Muslim fellow. And this actually came up. The same attire and the same shot came up in some of the pre-release posters. And in India, it became a big deal because a lot of people from the Goon community was like, "You're misrepresenting our leader," and it became a really big deal. And a guy like me who doesn't even follow movies, like, even I heard about it, so I was like, "Oh wow, what's going on here?" But it's kind of funny because I'm like, maybe the Goans would have actually sent a real shepherd for Rajamouli. Who knows if they actually had portrayed him like as a Muslim person. But then I think, and the thing is, it became such a big deal that even before the movie release, and a guy like me who doesn't even follow movies, even I knew that he's acting as a Muslim. Before the movie even like came out, like years ago, I already knew it, just like that. I mean, like, so it must have been such a big deal that they had to actually, literally like say it out loud that, okay, guys, he's not really that, whatever, this is what's actually happening. Anyways.
You forgot to turn the gas on.
His motorcycle to get, because he's like, oh, there's something wrong with it. You guys didn't fix it right. And Bahim, like, just pops a clutch and is like, okay, it's fine.
Okay, so this is one more thing, reserve, right? Like I get a sense that most people didn't understand this, like most Americans at least, and, like, didn't understand this. And probably I think nowadays in the two-wheelers, scooters, motorcycles, they don't have this system anymore so much because of all the electronics and stuff that you have and all the beepers and the electronics. But what it is essentially, and anybody like growing up in the 80s, 90s would know what this is. And everybody has actually faced this problem at least once, I guess. And everybody knows that, yeah, it's a silly thing to not check now. So what it is when your gas is coming short, right? When your gas is getting empty, your gas tank, right? So they have a little reserve tank right at the bottom of that, which draws your gas or petrol from a different line. So when your gas level is that low, now you do have a fuel gauge, but people don't see it, right? So it basically your scooter or your motorcycle will stop, and then you got to flick that valve so that it takes it from the reserve tank. So by saying that, he says reserve pe, that means your motorcycle's on reserve. All it means is you forgot to fill gas. That's all it literally means. You forgot to fill gas. So, and the reserve tank gives you about like 15 miles or so, 15, 20 kilometers, give or take. So it's good enough to get you to the next gas station. So yeah, that's basically what it is. So he didn't know that he got short of gas. You didn't fill gas in time. Now it's on the reserve tank. You just had to flick that switch, and he would have been good to go for another 15, 20 kilometers. If you're interested in knowing, but like, what happens if you don't put your reserve thing back on? Now, for example, like you go and fill gas, and your reserve valve is still on. So the next time, the reserve isn't going to work, right? Because it's just going to go right through the reserve, and then it's going to defeat the purpose. But that's not what's going to happen, because if your main tank is full, and your reserve tank valve is still on, when you start your motorcycle or your scooter, everything will start smoking, and it won't accelerate properly. It's like it'll be stuck on first gear, or and there's going to be a lot of smoke. You'll know immediately, and you're like, oh damn, I forgot to put the reserve valve, because it's taking too much gas, right? So too much, the combustion ratios all gets messed up and all that. So basically, that's what reserve it. All it means is he forgot to fill gas. That's all it means. Okay.
Even the white guys, even the British, nobody raises their hand and is like, I'm sorry, what? You took a girl? Like,
yeah. Do we have other shit to do?
We're
you don't even know who he is.
We're hostily occupying this country.
Yeah.
This one dude, you heard a rumor of a threat, and now we all have to like focus on it.
Yeah.
And also, dude, you took a girl.
Just give her back.
Yeah, just give her back.
Yeah.
You just give her back and use your gold to pay. There's women in this city that can, do the tattoo thing and probably can sing.
Yep.
Or you know what? Hire two people. Be a job creator. Hire,
Yeah.
The fact that they even wanted this little girl for so much, I don't even understand.
It's weird. It's weird. Why do you need her? Because she's good at singing and can make hand art.
It's the British. I mean, there's got to be 1,000 girls like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Take one not from this sacred village that if one person leaves, they send the Terminator out to go hunt it.
It is the Indian Terminator. This man does not die.
Yeah, it's wild. I would have gave that girl back very quick. I'll snag another
there
one.
There are a million of them. I'm just going to go get a foster. Like, why not get a foster girl? Like, why do you have to take it from the parents?
Yeah, they never really explained it, but stubborn in their ways with keeping the girl.
Weird.
I know too much.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty valid point. Like, it's kind of feels like a little sloppy-ish, loophole-ish kind of a thing in this whole setup. Is like, come on, you think that the British Administrative Services and this whole British, imperialistic Raj system, and why would they not just give the girl back? Is it such a big deal? Like, whatever. So the thing to look here is that, and they've played it very well, the director and the movie team, the storyline is very apt. What they've done is they've removed Governor Scott. They sent him to England. So Governor Scott is not there to make any kind of rational, logical decision, because let's face it, like the Nizam of Hyderabad, who is their good friend and ally, as also mentioned in this sequence, is sending a special emissary. So that's some pretty serious stuff. And like, you've got a country to rule. Like, are you really bothered about a little girl? Like, whatever. But that's the thing. Governor Scott's not there. Instead, what we have is the governess. Okay, now the governess has no business being here right now, actually, because that's not how it works. But she just squats on his chair, like just like that, and no one's going to say anything. Now, this is where we have to understand a bit about like how the British administrative systems work. The wives actually play a very big role. The thing is that if you get on the wrong side of like your senior or your commanding officer's wife, yeah, they will ruin your career. They will needle nag their husbands, and clearly we can see that the governor adores his wife, so he's going to listen to her. But that is actually what happens. So again, you'll see that in this movie, you'll see like how much respect is given and how much, to the women, like even to like Jenny, right? Like when she just says, why are you beating this guy? That guy just like shrivels up and runs away. Literally, he's like, okay, whatever. I don't want to deal with this. So a lot of it has to do actually with that, because women, like we're attached to important people, they play a very pivotal role. And this system actually is from the British administrative services, has actually still like it's petered out. Even now, the protocols are pretty much in place, even in the Indian administrative or government services and in the Indian Army. So the thing is, what's going on here is that she must have heard about this thing going on. Oh, somebody's here, like he wants this kid back. But she's probably already promised her friends that, oh, you must see this delightful package of a nightingale I've picked up from, my last tour down south. And oh, you must. And now she's not going to give the kid back. Nobody's going to even ask her. No one's going to say, excuse me, ma'am, would you be considerate to give the child back? Fuck, nobody's going to ask anything. They don't want to get on her wrong side. No, we already know she's a very vicious lady, right? Probably quite the egomaniac as well. So that's just one thing, like I think that the director did very well, is that he just removed Governor Scott, because Governor Scott would not make a weird medieval kind of statement like, oh, whoever gets that man, gets promoted to special officer. That's not how it works. And exactly what you see here is that when she says it, right, makes this grand announcement that whoever brings this hunter guy, will be promoted to special officer. Immediately look at like the two other guys. One's Edward and the other like senior officer there. They both look at each other. It's like, what the fuck? Like, that's not how it works. But who's going to say anything? You don't want to get on the wrong side. Like, the other thing is, you have to understand that, none of these guys have any skin in the game. None of them really care about India. It's like in the British administrative services, it's a transferable job. The worst thing that can happen is to get a poor transfer or a bad posting. And that would happen if, somebody screws up your file. Like, if the wife tells her husband that make sure you create this problem for this guy and all. And you can get a really bad posting. Like, you could get sent for the next 10 years to like the outbacks in fucking Australia. There's nothing to do. Or you could go to Yukon in Canada for like 10 months of the year. It's like freaking frozen and stuff. So seriously, it is exactly like that. So like if your senior officer's wife like literally says that, and you could be a decorated officer with a few stars on your, on your uniform, but if she says, I want to make like, I'm thinking of making banana bread, I need bananas, you will drop what you're doing, you run to the market and get her bananas. And if she says they're too green, you will go again and get her the right bananas. That is actually how it is. So is this situation probable? Probably not. But is it plausible given what we know about the character and what we know about, her character and how the whole situation is? I would think so. Yeah, it's plausible. So the only thing I want to say is that I think the director and the team, they did a great job, and in making sure that it's actually coming from the lady's mouth and not from Governor Scott's, because we look at Governor Scott like he knows his job very well. He's very professional. He knows his job very well, and you can see it in different scenes. Like, he's always in command. He's always in control. He knows exactly what he wants to do. Okay. And yeah, it's like the way to think about the British administrative services and the British imperialistic Raj is like, now you see this photo, like you remember this guy, he's like in The Patriot, he plays General Cornwallis, right? So Cornwallis is the guy who actually signs the surrender to the American Revolution, right? He literally loses America to the British Empire, okay? And you think that, oh, maybe, you know what, after that, he's probably just dig a hole and just hide himself, or if he has some code of honor, will he do harakiri or something? But no, instead, he gets promoted to be Governor General of India right after the American Revolution, after they just literally just lost an entire country. They're like, whatever, you win some, you lose some, we still have Canada, should be okay, whatever. You get to go to like the most coveted like role title in the world those days was Governor General of India. So that's where Cornwallis goes after losing in America. So these guys are like, so no one's got any skin in the game. Nobody's gonna put their head out and like, you know, ask her even like, hey, what do you think? Maybe we should like return the girl, or, ma'am, I don't think you're authorized to sit there. I don't know. No one even gives a shit. They just want to like just get by, put their ears, get their careers. Okay, that's all it is. Just a very career job. Okay, so just to note. And the other thing is you have to also understand that India was the best posting. If you got a job as a British officer in India, it's like the best place to be out of all the postings in the world, because the weather's good, the food is great, the culture is good, lots of tourism, and most important is that you make a lot of money. There's so much corruption and bribery. There was so much to loot. The word loot is a Hindi word, actually. It's not an English word. It just became an English word because of all the looting that happened when they were in India. So the thing is, so these guys are right now in a very comfy place. They do not want, they just prefer to be in India and like make a lot of money. So that's basically it. So I think that's the way I look at this scene. So it does. I'm completely willing to suspend my disbelief, whatever, for this, because the thing is, it's not the man. It's like this lady who's like, she's spun, and she just goes and makes a crazy decision. And now looking at this from the Indian traditional perspective, okay, this is important to put out there. In Indian ancient history, like in our Mahabharata and Ramayana. So the Ramayana is basically a story. It's about 13,000 years ago, about 11,500 BCE. And that's the story of Ram, okay, Lord Ram. Okay, so in ancient Indian epics, okay, it's very common that a lot of bloodshed, a lot of warfare comes from the ego of very privileged women. Okay, this is a common theme. You'll find so many instances of this. So like if you're interested, so this is what happens in Ramayana. Okay, so the Ramayana is basically it's a war between Ram and his adversary there is called Ravan. Okay, that's it. It's Ram versus Ravan. Okay, so what happens there is that so Ram is dwelling in the forest, okay, with his wife Sita and his brother Lakshman, okay. And now why are they in the forest? They're actually princes. He's a prince, but he had to go to the forest. There's a backstory. He was in exile, and so Ravan's sister, whose name is Surpanakha, she's frolicking in the forest and sets eyes on Ram, and she's immediately smitten. Okay, love at first sight, so to say. And so then she approaches him. Okay, and it becomes kind of an uncomfortable situation because maybe Ram is not really reciprocating that way, and it turns a little ugly. And then Lakshman, that's Ram's brother, chops her nose off. That's what the text says. Now people argue, did he actually chop it off, or was it just a form of insult to cut one's nose? Whatever. The point is, she's really pissed. And you know what? I guess that's where that saying starts, like, hell hath no fury as that of a woman scorned. So Surpanakha is in a rage now. She's pissed off, because she's been insulted. And she is the emperor's sister, right? So she goes not to Ravan, but to her other two brothers, who are basically like minor kings in an adjoining forest area, right? So the two brothers, their names are Kar and Dushan. And she tells them that I've been insulted. So these guys get up and it's like, who is this forest guy? How dare he do that? And also they go there with their like small battalions or something. And Ram kills both of them. He just kills both of them, okay? And now she goes to Ravan, okay? The real emperor, the eldest brother. And now Ravan's already like, he's too deep in the game. He's like, what the hell just happened? He's like, two of his brothers have been killed, sister saying that she's insulted, okay, but this was an unauthorized war. He didn't know anything about it. So even then he's like, okay, wait, just give me the facts. He just wants to know what happened, he wants to know what's the right course of action. And that is where Surpanakha in court throws a total hissy fit, okay, and she tells Ravan in court that you will not avenge your sister's insult. You're not a real man. Okay, you're less of a man. And then in the most dramatic episode in Indian ancient history, she takes off her bangles and chucks them at Ravan in full view of like all courtiers, ministers, and says, why don't you wear these? Okay, so the thing is, that episode is so like entrenched in the mindset of India. It's like it's still used as a common term. Like whenever you're questioning somebody's masculinity, you tell them churiyan pehle. That means why don't you wear bangles? It's all comes from that. But the point is that it's basically Surupnaka's ego and her, like, she got her two brothers killed, she got whatever, and now Ravan is in such a deep spot because he's been insulted also in court, he's been humiliated, he has to do something. And that is where this whole conflict of the Ramayana starts. So in the Indian traditional mindset, like, if you see this situation, you're like, yeah, that would happen. Yeah. Bitches spun, that would happen. Totally. They get it, you know? But I understand, like, coming from other places, people are like, oh, how is this law logical? Come on, they would do this, they would do that. But the important thing to understand is that the director has done an excellent job of not making Governor Scott say something as silly as, you know, whoever gets me that man is going to get promoted to special officer or some nonsense like that. So I think that's pretty well done here. Okay, so in this scene, I'm sure you guys didn't notice this, but there are actually two Indian languages. There's Bengali, and then that's followed by Hindi. So in Delhi, nobody speaks Bengali. It's everyone speaks Hindi in Delhi. But the thing I think they're trying to show here is that because at this time there were freedom fighters from all over the country, so even across languages, you know, you have people from Bengal and they can't speak Hindi, but they have translators. So the point is, it was just showing some kind of national unity. So that was nice.
Mataram. I have no idea what that is. Vande Mataram. I don't know what that is. What is it?
Okay, so Vande Mataram basically means I bow to, or salutations to, or I pray to the mother. So Vande is to, you know, salutations or bow to, and Mataram means mother. So because it's a Sanskritized form, that's why it's Mataram, but you can take out the last AM, so you'll be left with Mater, which is exactly, I think, how they say it in German, and it's completely cognate to mother. It's all the same word, Mater. Okay, so that's what it means. In fact, the national song of India is also called Vande Mataram. Okay, and of course, mother here means mother India, like to the country.
Raju!
Okay, so in this handshake scene, right over the bridge, the first time they shake hands, do you notice that this Ram's character like stutters and stammers, and you know why that is? So, like, I guess most people think, oh, maybe the rope is like nagging his waistline or something, and that's the kind of impression he gives. But we know he's tough as nails, right? So that's not going to be it. So what happened actually is that he was going to say Ram, but then he forgot he's undercover. He's like Ra, and then he's like Oi, which means damn it, and then he's like makes some excuse, and then he says Raju. So basically that's it. Okay, so this underwater handshake scene, right? So yeah, people say, okay, it's got to do with symbology, fire and water, and maybe that is true as well. And we'll get to the fire and water aspect, because that's pretty central to this movie. But what they're also showing here is that these guys are really fit, because muscle is much denser than fat, you know, so they sink quick and they can actually run, literally run underwater. Flabby guy like me tried that, I'd be going like, you know, one up and down like that, but these guys are like running underwater. So their BMI indexes are like great, I guess. Whether it's supposed to be high or low, I don't know. Whichever. But the point is, yeah, it's all muscle. Okay, so you may have heard that in this movie there are quite a few references, allusions to two great Indian ancient epics, right? The Mahabharata and the Ramayana, okay? And that is true, there are. So let's just very briefly just talk about these two epic stories. So the Ramayana and Mahabharata, firstly, are not actually mythology, like a lot of people will tell you it's mythology, but it's recorded as history. It's 100% historical. That's the way it's recorded. It's ancient Indian history, okay? So the Ramayana, in which we have our character Lord Ram and his adversary, the one he fights, it's basically a battle between Ram and his adversary, whose name is Ravan. Okay, and this happened about 11,000 BC. And then there's the Mahabharata, and that's also about a great civil war that India had, and this is about 3000 BC, okay? It's basically two factions of cousin brothers, okay? One's a set of 5 brothers called the Pandavas, and the other is a set of 100 brothers called the Kauravas, okay? So what's important is that when we do read some Ramayana and Mahabharata stuff, a lot of things just look completely superhuman, and we're like, no, this can't be real. Well, the thing is, what you have to understand, that these did not happen, they happen in different eons, okay? So in the Vedic traditional knowledge system, what we have are eons, or which we call yugs, okay? So the oldest one is Satyug, okay? Then comes Treta Yug, and that is where the Ramayana happened in. it happened in Treta Yuga. After that comes Dwapar Yuga, okay, and that is where the Mahabharata happens. And then the current eon or era that we are in, it's called Kal Yuga, okay, that's where we're living in right now. Now the thing is, according to Vedic knowledge systems, like the ability of man, both in size and his brain power and his morality, it keeps decreasing pretty rapidly, like from Satyug, where everything is like, everybody is like really moral, very strong, honorable people, and very intelligent. And then it starts gradually decreasing. And you know what? I think in Kal Yuga, it's like at its worst. So it's actually just the opposite of the theory of evolution. Like we're thinking we're getting smarter. No, actually, that's not what the Vedic knowledge system says. It says it's happening just the other way around. So the point is that in Dwapar Yuga or in Treta Yuga, the yugs before us, the eons or eras before us, like about 3000 BC, 11,000 BC, so people were way bigger, okay, way stronger, way more intelligent, and more moral as well. So that's why you'll see a lot of things that you can't believe now. Like you'll have things in the Ramayana that people are like uprooting trees and stuff. And you're like, people can't do that. But they're not the same people. Now we're the same species, but degraded. It's exactly the same as if you see fossils, right? Like I don't know if you've ever looked for crustacean fossils or sea fossils. You can ask any fossil person, and he'll tell you, yeah, that they'll have fossils of the same species, but it's like almost like 8 times, 10 times the size. I've seen these myself, right? You find them at any of these fossil parks. They'll show you. It's exactly the same thing. It's just the same way that like humans were way bigger before, you know, and now we're like in our smallest form. So just keep that in mind. It's all history, not mythology, and yeah, they happen in different eons, and the Mahabharata happened in the eon before ours, and the Ramayana happened in the eon even before that, okay? So whenever we come back to Ramayana and Mahabharata, there might be some allusions or some references, you know, some symbolism, so I can just like take it from there. Okay.
What are we doing? We're celebrating.
You gotta climb to the top, Aaron. We're celebrating this. You gotta finish it.
I'm just curious what is this?
Where
are those people cut? There was a giant pile. It's like they're like, hey, we just became friends, and they just made a giant pile to climb up. Like,
I love that they made that basically like a architectural structure of people.
Oh,
you know what I mean? For them to go up on. Is that like a thing in India? Do you think? Is it like?
What is that? What type of game is that? My man, you better hold on tight.
That's real.
What?
That shit's real.
Gosh, I am so confused.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is it's not a celebration for the thing that these two accomplished. No, actually what's going on here is a festival. It's called Janmashtami. It means it's to celebrate the birthday of Lord Krishna. So Lord Krishna is, who is Lord Krishna? Again, you may have heard Krishna. He's also considered a god. He was in Dwapar Yuga, that's 3100 BCE. He was the most adored, admired, and respected person in all of India. He was basically India's superstar and extremely charismatic person, very, very charismatic. So that's what's happening here. So, and he's also, Lord Krishna is also the architect, the director of the entire Mahabharata war. Okay, he's the central like architect of the entire war. Okay, so, and he's also celebrated as an avatar. Okay, like a Vishnu avatar, which is one of the godheads. And in Treta Yuga, the avatar was Ram, and in Dwapar Yuga, it is Krishna. So what's going on here is they're celebrating Krishna's birthday. So the thing about Krishna is that when he was a young child, he was very naughty. Okay, he was a very naughty child. And he had a great love for like milk products like yogurt and butter and ghee, which is basically like it's oil, milk oil. Okay, so he would generally raid the pantries when he was a kid, right? So he would like smash all the pots. So this festival is actually called Dahi Handi. Okay, dahi means yogurt and handi is the pot in which it's kept. Now it has different names in different parts of the country, but at least in North India, that's what it's referred to. So when Krishna was a young kid, he would raid the pantries and all the butter that's getting made, and he would just like eat it up or break all the pots and steal the butter. So he's also known as Makhan Chor. Okay, Makhan means butter and Chor is thief. So he's also known as the butter thief. Okay, and of course, making butter is a lot of work. There's a lot of churning all day, and the ladies were getting really pissed off about it. So they said, what do we do about this? So they devised a plan in which they would keep these butter pots or yogurt pots high up at the ceiling and tie them with rope so they'd be in the center of the ceiling. So you couldn't like climb up, and he was too short to reach it. So what Krishna and his friends, what they would do is they devise this plan and they'd make these human pyramids, okay? And then they'd go up and then they'd be able to smash it with their stick. And that's how we would get all the butter. So this is basically in memory of how Krishna was as a child, and it's his birthday and they're celebrating it. And yeah, the truth is, like in India, everyone adores and loves Krishna, but they like the child Krishna more. That's a fact. So that's what's going on here. And so what happens is that generally in these events, some guy is chosen who gets to play Krishna that day. The guy who actually goes up with a stick and gets to break the pot, right? So maybe he's like a local hero. I don't know exactly. No, maybe he's like a guy who hit a walk-off home run at some, minor league game, and okay, you get to be Krishna or something. So in this case, what happened is, of course, these two guys, they totally kicked ass that day, saved a kid and everything. So that kid goes and says, you guys get to be Krishna. And to be honest, at that time, I was thinking, oh, what about the poor guy who was originally chosen? He had to wait a whole year for this, and he just lost his chance. And he's probably thinking, why did this happen today? But in any case, so then these guys are actually wearing those headbands like you see here. So that's called the Krishna's Kanhaiya look. Okay, that's basically how Krishna dressed up as a young boy, maybe like the preteen or early teens to preteen. That's the look, okay? It's like the Kanhaiya look, where he used to wear a band and he used to have a stick. So Krishna had household duties too, so he was a shepherd as a boy. And what's interesting in this montage or this musical is that a few scenes later, you'll see both of these guys being chased by a young kid who's basically a shepherd, and he is literally dressed up as Krishna would have been like 3000 BC. It's the same attire. So same Kanhaiya look there too. So that's basically it. They go up and they're acting as Krishna. And nowadays, because they make it more festive, they put lots of colors into the yogurt and the butter that they put in the pot just to make it more festive. So that's what's going on here. Yeah, there's a festival going on. This was not built in celebration of the event that they did. It was already in place. You can see it also in the movie itself. And yeah, that's what's going on here. Okay, so this tree that you're seeing here, right? So this is called the banyan tree. Okay, it's called the banyan tree. It's actually India's national tree. And the way it works is that its branches will start dropping roots, and then those roots take ground, and then new trees form. So basically a tree becomes a grove. So it's called a banyan grove, but essentially it's just one tree. Now, the thing about this tree is it is the most sacred tree in India, and it's only indigenous to India. You only find it in India. You can grow it outside, but naturally it only occurs in the Indian subcontinent, everywhere in the Indian subcontinent. But it is the most sacred tree in India, and ecologically, environmentally, it is extremely important. In fact, a banyan grove is called a mini forest by itself. Like in India, we have these, children's fables. It's called the Panchtantra. Again, it goes back 1,000 years or so, where you have animals speaking and animals talking to each other. So literally every second story is like there was an owl that lived in a banyan tree. Once upon a time, there was a mouse that lived in a banyan tree. It's like literally every animal lives in a banyan tree. So it's extremely like in the Indian psyche, it's always considered a very, very sacred tree by everybody. And like most Indians, if you see a banyan tree immediately, then people will just like, go like that, because that's how it is. So in the British times, yeah, so the Britishers, they destroyed a lot of these banyan trees. So these banyan trees actually are called akshay. They're never ending. They don't die by themselves. These are thousands of years old. You'll have banyan groves in India that go back like 1,000 years old. But the British destroyed a lot of these banyan trees. Again, it's for mental degeneration. And the other thing that happened in the British Raj time was a lot of the revolutionaries would be hanged from banyan trees. I mean, there are recorded instances in which they hang 200 people from a single banyan tree, right? So again, it's just a subversion, right? Like colonialism is like, fine, whatever you hold sacred, we're going to like mentally degenerate that and make it a symbol of oppression or horror. So yeah, so it was standard practice to hang Indians from banyan trees because this tree was just so sacred. So that's what they're showing here. It's a nice shot. Okay, so again in the montage, you're going to see Bhim carrying these two big chunks of meat. And then Ram's uncle says, "You think that's going to be enough for him?" Of course, he's being sarcastic. And then Ram says, "Nazar mat lagao." That literally means don't cast an evil eye. So yeah, that's also somewhat of an Indian tradition, but especially when it comes to food. So if anyone's like gorging on food, like really pigging out, you never say you're eating too much. That's called like no. You just don't say it. Now why? I don't know, but it's just the way it is.
Nazar mat lagao, chacha.
It was,
and he had a lot of books.
He had a lot of books, and there's so many scenes of him coming in and him be like reading, and the other guy being like, "Oh,
he's like, I love this guy. He's my best friend."
Okay, yeah. So like this scene, yeah, I get it. Like for an average American or any foreigner, it kind of looks weird, right? Like this guy is sleeping and like all these books around, and this guy's like almost looking at him and affectionately and says, "I love you, dude." Like what a bro. And you're like, what the hell does this even mean, right? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we just have to talk a little bit about this era that this was in, and a little bit about like some of the subcultures that actually were there at the time. So in 1920, you would think that about less than 10%, maybe 8% of the country was literate. Okay, couldn't like 90+% couldn't read and write. Women, like practically no women could read and write, except the ones that living in cities or something. But basically nobody could read and write. So there was a lot of education destroyed by colonialism. Now, to be fair, like education started getting destroyed even before, like with the Islamic invasions, they destroyed all the universities. But at the village level, there was still some. But when the British came, they completely destroyed all the education. In fact, an American historian, his name is Will Durant, he came to India in 1930 and he wrote about it. And he says that the entire British Raj, the amount of money that they had set aside for education in 1930, in their entire like budget for education, was less than the high school budget of the state of New York in 1930. And this is not the India you know today. This is India plus Sri Lanka plus Bangladesh plus Burma plus Nepal plus Pakistan. Okay, so basically they didn't spend a cent on like education, and of course why would they? Because that's not what they were here to do. So traditionally, like India was a very educated country, right? Because even the British records will say that, yeah, there was a primary school like in every village. Okay, so people would learn to basically just read, write, basic math, and they'll teach them Ramayana, Mahabharata. I think that was the basic thing, right? So people were educated, right? And you'll see lots of ancient books coming from India and so many texts. But what happened, like when people were largely uneducated, right? So it creates a different subculture. It's kind of funny, like people would boast about like relatives that they've never met just because the guy, went to high school. They'd be like, oh, I have this distant relative, and so I'm better than you are, things like that. So that actually happened. Like you'll hear like all these stories from your grandparents because because people admire education. If you know anything about Indians, you'll notice that, yeah, they always try to get the best education they can, so they've always had that, but they never had any opportunities. So basically it was a country of, they're called Angutha chops, okay, which means thumb imprinters, because they couldn't sign their name. So that's what India was. Now historically, this character, right, Komaram Bhim, right, he was not very educated. He could just about read and write, right? So he's seeing his friend. So what he's looking at him and saying, look at that. That's my buddy. That's my friend. That's my bro. Look how educated he is. Look at all the books he can read, and then he like goes like that, like, like he gets pumped up, he's actually feeling so proud, right? He's like, I've got bragging rights now. I've got boasting rights. Do you know anyone that educated? I have a friend, who's so educated. What do you have? It's something like that. That's literally how the culture used to be back then. It is funny, like especially like in hinterland India, like in rural India back then, like if somebody actually went to high school or managed to go to college, people all over the district would know, oh, there's that one guy there, he studied so much, like wow, things like that. So this is actually just taking us back and like giving you an idea of like, how things were, that yeah, you'd feel so proud if you knew somebody who could like read and write so much. That's basically it. Yeah, so one of the ways they get you as far as education goes, is they make paper a very scarce commodity. Like in the British Raj times, and even well after independence for quite some decades, paper was a very scarce commodity. It was expensive, people were poor, but also it was just very scarce. So traditionally, like Indian kids, when they went to schools, they would actually carry something called a slate. It's like just a little blackboard, and they would tie it on their necks. It's just a little blackboard, and then they use chalk, and you'd write, and then you just wipe it out, and that's pretty much how most of the country was being educated, because they didn't have like enough paper. In fact, one of the greatest mathematician geniuses ever, his name is Ramanujan. Okay, he's an Indian mathematician, right? And he literally learned math with a stick on beach sand, because even he didn't have paper. And he actually went to Oxford and stuff, so there's a big story about him. There's a movie about him too. But that's just one of the other things that, yeah, they make paper very scarce, so it's very difficult to get a proper education.
Starving.
बाएं हाथ से मत खाया करो. Don't eat with your left hand. What does that mean if you eat with your left hand?
It's
Do you know?
yeah, I think it's sort of a cultural thing. I've seen it. I'm not necessarily particularly Indian culture, but it's sort of like I think one's used to sort of wipe your behind when you use the washroom, and then the other one is used to sort of eat. So I think that's as I understand it, one is more traditionally a dirtier hand, and then the other. So that's as I understand.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk a bit about eating with the left hand. So in the movie, as you see, like in the initial friendship montage, you'll notice that Ram, he looks very affectionately, lovingly at Bhim, when Bhim says that, oh, you know what, because he's eating with his left hand, and his mom tells him don't do that. And he remembers his own childhood days when his younger brother also, ate with his left hand, and the mother said don't do that. So what is this deal about eating with the left hand, right? So as you saw in the clip before, a lot of Indians will also say that the left hand is dirty because it's used to clean up after number two, but that is basically nonsense. I mean, there is something called soap and water, right? So that's not the real reason, okay? So what it is that in the traditional Indian knowledge system, they do frown upon left hand dexterity, especially like finger dexterity, right? Now, why? There are studies about it, left-handedness, right-handedness, how it affects, the different lobes of the brain and stuff like that. So anybody can read up about it, and there is some statistically proven issues with it. But besides that, I think it's just even in English, if you look at the language, right, we call the right hand as right, and then we call the left hand as so the word left comes from the word Luft, right? It's a German word. It means light, airy. Kind of the connotation is a bit silly, like Luftwaffe, which was the Nazi Air Force, right? It's airy. And even in English, like the word to write, actually to write, is the same as the right, okay, hand. And French, if we see it, it's droit, which is again adroit, the English word, which again signifies some kind of dexterity. In Spanish, it's derecha. Again, that comes from dexterity. So it's not only an Indian thing, I guess it's like pretty much a global thing. Yeah, so in truth, actually, in both these cases, neither of them are actually eating with their left hand. So like in Indian cuisine, like when you eat with your hand, like either it's going to be rice or it's going to be roti, which is flat bread, and you've got to like mix everything properly and cleanly and then put it in your mouth, and you don't want to make a mess of the plate or of your mouth. So in both cases, and it's perfectly okay to use your left hand to pick a piece of carrot or cucumber and eat it. That's not a big deal. So in both cases, they're not actually eating with their left hand, but mothers out of habit, they just say it, So that's what's happening here. And in truth, I've never actually seen anyone in India eat with their left hand. Like I have never seen anyone. And honestly, I've never even seen like a Chinese or East Asian using chopsticks with his left hand either. So maybe it's more of a global thing than anything else. Okay, so like here you see that Bhim asks about like Ram and about his fiance, and he's like, oh, Sita, and then he's like, Ram and Sita, okay, and then he's like this. He does this, right? So this basically just signifies like perfect, like if you have an Indian person over for dinner or something and ask how was the food, and he goes like this, it means like it was just excellent, perfect. That's all. Okay, so here you see these two people, right? They're playing this board game, this dice or board game. So this is called Chausar. Okay, now it's called different things in different parts of India, but in my part of India, it's called Chausar. Okay, so it's a very ancient traditional game. It's reputed to be played by the gods. Okay, and like in the Mahabharata, there's a very critical episode in which this game is being played and being gambled, and like that's where one set of brothers, the Pandavas, they start losing. They lose their whole kingdom. They lose all their wealth, and then they start gambling. Each brother, the eldest brother is playing, starts gambling one brother away after another. So yeah, it's a pretty big thing. But the thing is, now it's kind of outdated. I don't think too many people know about this game so much. I think they're maybe played in some of the villages, but otherwise, historically, this game is well known all over India. It's been played since ancient times. So that's probably something you guys would not have known.
Is there a bus stop or a tram station nearby?
Okay, so this is one thing that really got me. Like, you see Jenny, she asks, like, is there a bus stop or a tram station nearby? And trams, for all Americans who don't know, it's just a streetcar, okay? And, like, I've been to Delhi 100 times, and I'm like, okay, he just did it for, like, looking cool or acting cool. And you do see some, scenes with, like, these trams, right, plying the roads and all that. And I'm like, Delhi doesn't have any streetcars. I've been to Delhi, like, 100 times. So, of course, it doesn't have streetcars. And then I was like, wait. And then I just Googled and I found out, yes, they did. They did have streetcars in the 1920s. And so this is actually amazing. Like, the historical accuracy, I never thought it'd get me like this. I can bet you like 99% of Delhiites who have like lived there all their lives, they wouldn't know that there were ever trams plying the streets of Delhi. So this is actually wonderful. It really got me by surprise. I never thought any Indian cinema would like actually teach me about something that big. Like, I never thought it happened.
Jenny catches Beam's eye.
And Beam looks at her like, look at this beautiful white lady over there.
And this other guy, the guy from the village, kind of gets a crush on this white girl that's part of the, imperialist people that are there.
And then Beam is going to spot this British woman, Jenny, that he gets a huge crush on. Okay.
But what surprised me is in a movie that's all about the citizens of India rising up against the invaders or the colonizers from England, is that there's a love interest between Beam and Jenny.
Okay, so this has to be the singularly most problematic thing, especially for the Western audiences or foreigners, that they all believe that there was the romance between Jenny and Beam, and they believe that like Beam had a crush on Jenny or something like that. And this is, I guess, something that the director's kind of tweaked. He's kind of left it like a very grayish kind of a thing. He doesn't want to go too hard on either side. But in truth, there is no indication that Beam was romantically involved or inclined towards Jenny. And it was, truthfully, he's just in soldier mode, and he just wants to get into the campus to have a look at it. But I can understand where all the problems come from. But it's strange. And so we can look at the Jenny-Beam relationship, like right from the start. So the first time is that like Beam gets one of his gang guys, like his cohorts, to like try to infiltrate into the campus by dressing up as a gardener or some kind of landscaper. Okay, but they don't know that you need an ID, and so of course he doesn't have ID, and he starts getting beat up. And luckily, that's when Jenny comes to the rescue and says, just let him go. And immediately, that's the first time we see Beam actually sees Jenny, right? But then the music in the background makes you think, oh, whatever. Maybe he's getting like feelings for her and all that. But there is no indication. Like immediately after that, if you notice, he's going to go and walk behind Jenny's car, okay, and try to look inside. But he can't even see inside the campus because there's a double door security system, so only one door can open at a time, so you can never actually see the lay of the land, the lay of the campus inside. And ultimately, they know that they'll have to go inside there if they want to rescue Mully. Okay, so after that, when he comes back to his friend, and his friend's like, oh, you got beat up, he doesn't really care. He's like, we got away lucky, man, because it could have been way worse than that. Immediately, he goes on to plan B, right? And he just says that, oh, you know what, this girl, it seems like she has a kind heart, maybe she could be a means to the end of trying to get inside and, having a look at what's inside, okay? And then what happens is in the next scene, you'll see again in the montage, like he's looking up at Jenny, and it looks like in the music, the way it plays is, and he takes his cap off and stuff, and everyone's like, oh, he's probably just getting romantic, But again, it's the way you want to see it, right? So the director's, he's just kept right on middle ground. He's like, okay, you know what? Let people think what they want, right? But ultimately, like, if this ever goes to like arbitration and you want to prove, you won't get any proof that, unfortunately, that Bhim actually is attracted to Jenny. And even if you think about it, like, imagine as an Indian guy, you're watching this movie. This guy's here on a mission. Okay, he's here to like save a girl, get a girl back who was abducted, and he starts flirting and having a romantic relationship during that. I mean, isn't that just ugly? That would be so stupid. Like, it wouldn't work. I mean. So that's not it. But anyways, I get it. The director doesn't want to go too hard. He doesn't want to make him look like a Van Damme universal soldier, even though in many ways he is. But he doesn't want to portray it that way. He just wants to let it be in that like gray area. And after that, I think this is the one place where I think the most confusion happened, is that when he's on his motorcycle, right, and he's looking at Jenny. Again, he's just looking at Jenny. And the music plays romantic in the background, just to confuse people or whatever, because all he wants to do is he wants to just somehow, see if he can befriend Jenny, and maybe she can show him inside the house. So that's his ultimate objective. And that's when Ram sees him looking at her, and then he says that itni sundar hai kya, like, is she that beautiful? Okay, and what he says is sundar to hai bhai. Okay, so what that actually means is, and I saw the subs, I think that's where all the confusion comes. The sub says that she is very beautiful. Okay, but that's not how it's supposed to be seen. It's more like, well, she is beautiful, bro. Like, that's what he says. Sundar to hai bhai. Like, he's not going to deny it. And she is beautiful, right? So he's like, she is beautiful. It's not like she's gorgeous, she's so hot. It's not that kind of, it's not like she's very beautiful. It's not like that. It's just like sundar to hai bhai. Like, she is beautiful. That is, I think, where the entire problem comes. Because when you're reading the subs, you're not actually listening. You don't understand the language. And anyways, then things carry on, and then we have, and that's why you notice that, like, the moment they go out in the market, and the only thing he's trying to ask is that your house is so big, can I come and see it? And then other people, like, who are already thinking that he's trying to be romantic, and people are like, oh, that's kind of forward. But what else is he supposed to do, right? He's a simple guy. He can only ask that question, right? It's not going to, like, beguile her with his mastery over the English language, try to, like, get inside the house. He doesn't even know English. So there's nothing to it. He's just being straightforward. And then when they come back, then we have this scene.
Feb 14th.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
It's like Valentine's Day, no?
14th.
Valentine's Day. February 14th, Valentine's Day.
And so the thing is that in 1920, if you asked anybody what February 14 is, they'd say it's the 14th day of February, schmuck. There's nothing else to it, right? Because there was no Valentine's Day 100 years ago. But again, the director and the production team, they're just playing games. Maybe mind games. They're just trying to make it look cute or funny, or not entirely, whatever it is. And even after that, like, even when they're dancing, I think they're dancing again. You see that he's asking the same question. He's like, can I come to your house? And she's like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. And so then finally, after the dance, when he gets invited to go for a coffee, right? And you'll suddenly see his expression changes, and he's just looking all like, oh my God. And a lot of people at the time are like, maybe he's nervous that, oh my God, and I don't know. And then when he goes inside the house, his eyes light up and he's looking everywhere. And people are like, he's probably just like flabbergasted, or like he's like never seen so much opulence, and he's like, wow, That's not it. It's just recon. It's pure recon. Every single thing he's doing is just to check all the security systems that he'll need to know about. So he checks how many guards there are. He's checking, how's this door? What's it made of? Will the truck be able to ram through it? How big is the lane in front? How wide is it? Because he's got to, ultimately they have to like break in with the truck, and then they've got to drift it. They want to know if there's enough space. He's looking left and right. Every time, like, you see him looking around, you get an impression that he must be like, so out of place and all. Maybe he is out of place, but I don't think that's what bothers him. He's just in soldier mode. He's just on a mission. So he's just doing recon. And like everything just adds up clearly to that point. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I get it. I understand where the confusion comes from. The director's also done a good job to add to the confusion, and some of the subs, the translations just do not do justice to the way it was being said in the real dialogue. But if you ask me, It's one of the things I think the director just said, hey, you know what, let's just be cool. Like even in India, like a lot of the girls and the women, they're like, oh yeah, definitely he had a crush on her. There's a relationship, and the guys are like, no, meh, it is what it is.
There is a small girl staying with us. Mally. This is for her.
Oh, she brought her up.
Damn, I need some naan for this revelation.
That means, like, she's even closer than he thought.
Yeah, then again, I don't think a lot of people understood this scene either. Like, it's the first time when Jenny tells Bhim that, no, it's not for me, it's for a small girl staying with us, Mully, and then he hears Mully, and then he suddenly, like, he's almost like breaking down, getting all emotional. So what exactly is going on here? Like, you know, because I've already said, like, yeah, they want to go inside the campus because, you know, that's where Mully, if they're going to find her, she's going to be in there. But that's the catch. Like, if you remember, right after the tiger capturing scene, right, he asks his friend, you know, the guy who works with him, Pitaya, he says, is Mully still alive, though? Because they don't know if Mully is alive. This is the point at which they know that Mully is alive. So that's the expression of a man who just find out that, oh, thank God she's alive. Because they knew that if she is alive, she's going to be inside the campus. They have to go inside the campus and try to see if they can find her or look at her, something. But they just didn't even know that she's alive. So they were under that stress that she's maimed, she might already be dead. And that is the expression of a man who just finds out that, you know what, she is alive. And then you can see the relief and the emotion. And it's like this burden is gone. He's like almost like so happy. Very good actor. Very good actor. Okay, so then we have this sequence in which they nail Jenny's tires, and then she has a puncture and it stops there, right? So the first thing is that just like the audience would obviously think that, okay, because he's a mechanic, he's going to fix it, right? And that's what exactly Bhim also thinks. And then you'll notice when Ram Charan's character, he goes and nods, like he said, yeah, because that's a very sarcastic, you know, yes, you know, in India they do that a lot. And basically what he's saying is that, yeah, we're not small fry, go big or go home. That's not what I was thinking. So automatically, you know, okay, that's not what he's thinking about, like, you know, just fix your puncture. And she says, thank you, so you're welcome. And no, that's not what they're thinking. And then again, you'll notice that when she asks if anyone can fix the puncture or something, and he says, "Haan, main 5 minute mein kar dunga." Like, this expression in India just means in a jiffy, in no time. Just give me a second, you know? Like if you're on the phone and someone say, hurry up, we gotta go, and you're just like, you know, it just means give me a moment, okay? Just like in no time or in a jiffy or just a minute or two. So what this guy does is, and this is kind of rude, I guess, outside India. Like if you do this to a lady, it's kind of what the hell is going on? But it's an Indian thing, okay? So what the other guy does is, then he says it's take 5 hours. So he's just using this expression to just make up something else, right? In this case, this does not match 5 hours. You know, it's like you go into a restaurant and you have like a really bad meal, like you didn't like it at all, and someone asks you, hey, how was lunch? And you're like, it was disgusting, like, you know, you're like, dude, what are you doing? It makes no sense, right? So that's basically the comedic thing here, which I guess you guys didn't get. So this in India just means like quickly, I'll just do it in no time, you know. So that's it.
Naatu Naatu, and I'm like out of my mind. I mean, musically, it's a very catchy song. It's a very, I don't know if it's like Indian pop. I don't even know what the genre is, what kind of modern pop, modern music genres they even call there. It's a very danceable modern tempo with the Naatu. If someone can tell me how long Naatu has been around, that would be amazing. In other languages, is it Hindu that is called Nacho?
Okay, so now next we have that dance sequence, right? The Naatu Naatu dance, right? So here too, I think there's a lot of things that were kind of lost in translation or not understood in contextually, basically what this dance actually is. It's to be understood that this is a complete parody dance, okay? So what's going on here? So a lot of people think this is an exposition of Indian dance or Naatu Naatu as if it's a real dance. No, there's nothing like that, okay? So let me just explain what the director and what this whole choreography team is up to. So we see that English guy, Jake, right? He trips Bhim and then he's like, you're a country oaf and you guys don't have any finesse. Okay, so what this is not way of showing that Indian dancers also have finesse. No, it's actually just the opposite. Okay, so let's see. Like in Hindi, they say, "Do you know Desi Nach?" That's what Ram asks him. Okay, so Nach is actually a very crude, uncouthish, lower form to say dance, right? So in Hindi, for example, Nach would be like the lowest form. That's where you have this term called Nach girls, right, in English. So like if you ever like say that my daughter is learning Nach, people will be like, oh my God, what is she up to? But the higher form of word, like either you use just the English word dance, which is fine, everybody understands it, or like if you want to go to the highest form of word, it would be Natya, which is a Sanskrit word, and then that directly relates to all these traditional high finesse dances, like like Odissi, Manipuri, Bharatnatyam, Kathakali, all these, and they're very tough to understand and they're very boring. And for a guy like me, I don't really understand them. But that would be probably if somebody's trying to do, like, on the one hand, they're doing flamenco and tango and saying, oh, okay, something like that. So then, India would have that like that. Okay. But that's not what they do here. Okay. What he says, and he says it, and then he says, do you know Desi Nach? So he qualifies the word Nach, which is already an uncouth form of word for dance. It doesn't sound nice either. He says Desi, which here the connotation is kind of more like, more like rustic, okay? So rustic dance, okay? Like rustic low form dancing, okay? And he says it with a straight face, so it's really funny. In fact, it's like, it's a little cringy also. It's like, oh my God, what's he saying? It doesn't sound right. And that's why I think in the English subs, they didn't translate that, because there's nothing to translate. So what's going on here, like in the American context, how you would understand this is like, for example, say there's some big symposium, musical symposium, and you have all these classic musicians come in, and they've all like practiced 20 years and all like classical music stuff. And one guy's telling the other, oh, do you know Bach's Symphony Number 9? And do you know Mozart's, Overture, Concerto, 12 or something, And then there's one dude there, and he's like, not Bach, not Mozart, my brother. Do you know gangster rap? And he's like, what's gangster rap? Okay, and suddenly it just explodes into like, bitches in the house, get your asses on the couch, or something nonsense like that. Just imagine. So that's the way you have to look at this, okay? Because the lyrics are also stupid in this. It's something like, just dance like a crazy buffalo, or like a horse that's breaking out of a stable, or like, you've eaten a lot of chilies, your ass is on fire. It's stupid, okay? Just remember this. This is complete parody and complete stupid. So don't think that Desi Nach is the actual kind of a dance, and there's these steps are like something that they know. I think any choreographer in the world could have made this up. Like, it's not an exposition of any Indian dance form. And like, even if you look at it, right, like there's that one part in which like, then they're like, the women that are doing their European style dance, and these guys are like, nah, that's not good enough. Do this instead. And then literally there's one part in which they're teaching them to do like pelvic thrusts, it's like you might as well just teach them to twerk, right? It's something like that, okay? It's complete stupid, right? And that's when that English guy comes in. He's like, this is disgusting. He just breaks in and he's like, this is disgusting. And it is disgusting and filthy, because, pelvic thrusting, like, what are you trying to teach women? But that's the whole point of this. It's complete parody. They've taken the word finesse, and they've gone diametrically opposite, okay? And like, as far as disgusting goes, if you look carefully, like, look, the Jake comes in, he just bangs right into this Ramcharan's character, and you tell me, like, the Ramcharan's face, that's the face of a man who's like on the verge of being violated. So that's pretty disgusting too here. But in any case, and then after that, Ramcharan, like, goes this is the Indian style of saying not today. Not today. It's more like not today. So that's basically it. Okay, I'm joking here. You know that, right? So anyways, so yeah, so that's the way to just look at this dance number. Okay, so it's a lot of fun, and but it's complete parody. Okay, it's not anything to do with finesse or any style of Indian dancing or anything. They're just taking whatever he said. He says talk about finesse, but he says we're going to go 180 degrees opposite. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, then we have this snake scene, right? So in the subs, it comes as a banded crate, but that's not a banded crate. It's got no bands on it. It just looks like a normal, like a pinkish crate. So another thing, yeah, snakes are not harmful actually to humans. They won't bite you. The only times that snakes actually bite people are actually when people accidentally step on them in the fields and all that. They sometimes step on a snake straight, and then it won't release that much poison. But in this case, it does because it's under a lot of stress and duress. So the guys held it by its neck for a long time. So maybe that's what it happened. Like in the British times, they now snakes are very important for agriculture because they kill all the rats and all the birds and stuff like that. And in the British times, yeah, the Britishers tried a lot to like eradicate as many snakes as possible. They gave out awards in those days, like expensive stuff, like maybe like 50 cents, like that's a lot of money for a snake, because people were so poor. And they did have some success, but even then, because like in India, snakes are worshipped and very, very like sacred in like a lot of places, it didn't work out. So they did try to like get rid of a lot of snakes. But like in the US, you guys have these snake roundups in which you're just killing thousands of rattlesnakes, and yeah, that's not good. No, that should stop.
Into Beam cures him of his uncurable snake poison.
yeah, it's like the British don't know you got to get like a burning piece of coal and then make it like melt and you drink it.
Yeah, okay, so just a brief note on all these herbal remedies. So it's actually not that rare in India at all. Like it's pretty commonplace, especially like in the villages in rural India. People actually try their own traditional herbal remedies first, and allopathy or like Western medicine, modern medicine is it's a later resort, right? And as a matter of fact, the modern Western medicine or allopathy, as we know it, is essentially it's a product. It's a post-colonial product in which the colonialists they took all these herbal remedies and these home remedies or grandma's remedies, what you will, and they extracted the active ingredients and then they just put it in the form of a pill. So what you're seeing here is not exactly like rare or like it's quite commonplace. Okay, yeah. So this is also something that most Americans would not have got. Like, so when Ram is like poisoned by the snake, right, and Bhim is trying to help him out, making all these herbs and medicines and all that stuff, and you'll briefly see him. He goes to a place of worship, right, and he just prostrates and he prays there. So that is actually a Hindu place of worship, right? Because you can tell, like, based on like the oil lamps that they have, and then they have that structure hanging from the top, like a pot. It's called a kalash and all that. And this guy's supposed to be a Muslim, so that's the first time like Ram actually sees, that Bhim might have been lying to him, or he is lying to him, that he what's he doing praying at a Hindu thing. So these are just some cultural things that only being in India you'd get. But if you look at the scene properly and look at the expression in his eyes, his eyes light up just a bit, and then the whole note will hit right then. So that's very interesting to see. And then the next thing, he takes out his sacred thread. Again, Muslims don't wear that. So again, like Ram it's all in a state of paralysis. He's seeing all this, and then he recognizes that sacred thread is the same as the other guys. So it's quite emotional. But yeah, Ram does a great job. Like his acting is just excellent here. And the other thing you have to see here is like from Bhim's perspective, right? Like he has played the Muslim part to perfection. Like he's complete soldier mode. Like if you notice in the first time, like when that English officer beats him up, and then kicks him in the head. Then also he says, Ya Allah. Like he sticks to being a natural Muslim person would say, because Hindus won't say Ya Allah, they'll say like, Hey Ram, Hey Bhagwan, or something like that. And then there's another scene in which after the dancing, he's so tired, and like Ram's picking him up, piggybacking him, and he says, Ya Khuda, my feet are falling off. Again, he says Khuda. Again, that's what Muslims say, right? So everywhere you see that, even in times of a lot of stress and pain or high emotion, he still doesn't forget that he's supposed to be a Muslim, right? But this is the one time, okay, when I guess his state is in such a way that he can't hide his true self, and he goes to the place to worship for his friend's life, So it's kind of pointed that way too. So anyways, I just thought I'd point that out. Okay, so now we find out that his real name is not Akhtar, his real name is like Bhim, and his full name is Komaram Bhim, right? So just to let you know, Kumaram is the same as Kumar, okay? As in like Harold and Kumar. It's the most common name in India, right? And like if you ask anybody in England, have you heard of Kumar? He'll be, yeah, that's an Indian name. He'll say it's like the Smiths of England, right? And that's true, actually, in more ways than one, actually, because Kumar basically is a person like a trades guy, hands-on trades guy, technically skilled guy, and that's exactly like a Smith. A Smith is also a Kumar, okay? Like all Smiths or mechanics, everything, anything to do with that, that's basically what Kumar is, right? So in this movie, at least, like he literally lives up to his name very well. Like you can see that, like, you know, he can rig a truck, he can work as a mechanic, he can make jewelry, he can set like traps. So he's very technically minded, very technically sound person. So that's just another thing. So they've done that well too here.
I've never seen that before. And it wasn't even a real jaguar or cheetah or what.
By unleashing tigers, bears, cheetahs, and wolves into the British compound.
Dude, he had a freaking cheetah.
Yeah.
They all jump out of the side of the cages, and it's
cheetah? A jaguar?
Beautiful.
Okay, yeah, just for your information, there are no jaguars in India, right? Jaguars you only get in South America, I think. Now, cheetahs is interesting. Actually, cheetah, the word is actually an Indian word, okay? It comes from Sanskrit. It's a pure Indian word. And the Indian cheetah is different from the African cheetah, okay? They're different species. But the thing is that India has no cheetahs anymore now. They're extinct. Absolutely extinct. In 1920, in fact, I was looking very carefully at that. Like, did he put a cheetah in? Because in 1920, you did have cheetahs in India. But no, none of them are cheetahs. They're all leopards. The cheetah has been wiped out of India. It's no longer found anywhere on like the Indian subcontinent. Completely wiped out during the colonial era. Now, there are some Asiatic cheetahs. That's what the Indian cheetah is. It's the Asiatic cheetah left. They're in Iran, like about 30 of them. And the Indian government has asked if they could, like, you know, get a few. But then Iran says that if you want our cheetahs, you have to give us your asses. And then the Indian government's like, no, we're not giving our asses to anybody. And then they're like, come on. And India's like, come on. It's been going on for like 50 years. So I don't know if anything's ever going to happen. But that's the story, yeah. So no jaguars, no cheetahs. They're all leopards.
쟤네들도 지금 갇혀있는 상태에서 야생이니까 완전 흥분한 상태고 아무나 물어뜯는 거니까 거기다 불도 있고 막.
Yeah, just to put it out there, animals, wild animals, they won't generally attack humans and they won't be so aggressive. But in this case, they are. It's primarily because they were caged. If you cage an animal and then they're probably underfed too, the combination of that with fire, yeah, then they can become aggressive. But otherwise, it's not likely that they would just be, you know, they'd probably be scampering around for safety otherwise. Yeah, so here a lot of people are like, oh, he can't do it because, you know, he loves his brother and all. But I think it's pretty clear now. I mean, like, he's not supposed to kill him. He has to bring him alive for the promotion. I mean, it's in the script straight up. And if he did want to kill him, he would have just shot him first up, right? Okay, so this is what is called the interval scene, okay? So just for Americans who don't know, so the concept of an interval scene is it's basically the scene before the interval break, because movies in India are about 3 hours long. So at the 1.5 hour mark, they give you like a 10-minute break so people can stretch their legs, go to the washroom, and, you know, pick up some snacks or whatever. So the concept of an interval scene, why it's rated, is it's supposed to act as a hook, okay? So that you actually come back after the interval. Like, there are many a movie that I've left with friends and family. Like, you know, it's too stupid that it's not even worth going back to. There's nothing that can save the movie. And in fact, some directors are so pathetic that what they'll do is, because they know that nothing can save their movie, so at the interval scene, just before the interval, they'll just introduce a new character, just a new face, so that he thinks that, oh, maybe they'll think that, oh, who's that guy? Maybe there's something to do with him. Maybe you should go back and check out who that guy is and all, something like that. People try all these stupid tricks, right? But the point of a good interval scene is that it's a solid hook, you know, that you're not going to walk away from this movie. You're going to go back and you want to see what it is, right? Yeah. So, like, yeah, like, see that?
Oh my.
Oh! What is this?
If this movie fucking ends, I'm gonna lose my life.
That's an indication that it's a very good interval scene.
That he beat him with,
He beat him with a whip.
With a Castlevania level 9 whip.
I was like,
was wild.
I was like, whose idea was this scene? Did they get Mel Gibson for a freaking consultant? I'm like, what is going on?
Okay, so this is the flogging scene, right? So why was this scene added? Surely there must have been some dramatic impact. It is a movie after all. But let's talk a little about flogging, right? So flogging was a regimented practice for correctional practice, right, in the British Empire, right? And it was all over as well. Like they even used it on their own ships, right? Like for roustabouts or obeying orders, or like for sailors and stuff. It was used. The problem is that in India specifically, it was way more prevalent. I mean, the kind of smallest to smallest crimes, you can't even call them crimes, like misdemeanors or like little whatever things, people would be flogged, right? So in India, from the mid 19th century on, roughly between 9,000, 2,000, 2,500 to about 9,000 people were being flogged each year, right? So that's roughly about like 11, 12 people per day, you could just say it like that, okay? We're being flogged every day. And like you can go to the British records. I think you can find them online as well. They'll tell you exactly like for what kind of misdemeanors or like small little infractions you'd get flogged for. Like if you stole like a loaf of bread, or if it's like a bottle of whiskey, then you get like 20 lashes, and then you get followed by 1 year in prison, 2 months in solitary confinement. They show all these things. They show what a prison looks like. They show the solitary confinement as well in this movie. Okay, and so flogging was a big thing in India. For like the smallest of things, you get flogged, right? So in this case, like in this movie, the version of it's a very sanitized version of flogging. Like if you have the real eyewitness reports, they'll tell you that after 6 or 7 flogs, your skin literally starts exploding off, right? And they didn't show anything of the sort here. I guess the skin gets really soft and tenderizes, and then literally just starts erupting. And I think in Passion of the Christ, they actually show that they're like a piece of flesh coming out and flying out. Like so, Mel Gibson, he does his research. He knows this stuff, right? Okay, but what's actually interesting? One of the most costly aspects of flogging. Now, this is something which is going to be weird to listen to. Is that a lot of people, like a big proportion of people, like, and this is even discussed in the British Parliament. Like this was a significant proportion of people were purposely, getting caught, just doing some minor infraction and getting caught so that they could get flogged. And you won't believe why. Because the reason is because it was to alleviate the pangs of hunger. Can you believe it? So hunger is the biggest fucker. It's the worst. Like we say that, oh, I'm so hungry, like I could eat a horse. No, you're not hungry. We guys don't know what hunger is. Like we're talking clinical starvation here. So I think it's supposed to be so bad. So they would actually purposely be willing to get flogged just so that they could alleviate that pangs of hunger. So that's pretty sad. They don't show much about hunger here because, like in the colonial era, like the Britishers, a lot of famines were engineered, a lot. Like we only know about maybe half or a quarter of them, like at best. But millions died of starvation and stuff. That is also true. They do touch upon it a little bit. Like later, if you'll notice that, and this is another interesting thing. Like later, you notice that there's a scene in which Mully is very hungry, right? And they can't get her food. And then the lady, she says, like, yeah, bachi ko sirf pani pila sakta. That means, oh God, we can only give this girl water, okay? And now this is also very strange because, like, growing up in India in the 80s, like, when you're 7, 8 years old, they're like, kids are always coming up with this trivia. And I've heard this as a kid, right? And like another guy tells me, you know what? If you're starving, you can drink water. And then they'll also tell you, but it's not good for you. It's not good for health. And the next time you have hunger pangs, it's going to be way worse. So I'm like, thanks, that's some good trivia to know and everything. Again, of course, this is not taught in schools or anything. This is just like those underground rumors that go on the oral histories. And then you actually get to see it right in this movie, right? Like in which they actually do exactly that. Like she actually says that, so the girl is like, hungry or starving, and like, you can only give her water just to alleviate, the hunger pangs for a little longer, I guess, And the scene also in which actually when Bhim actually promises to get Ram back to Sita, he actually says, yeah, you fed us. And then he actually takes like I don't know how it works out in the English subs, but in Hindi he says that I will take an oath on the grain you have fed us. Okay, so that's another maybe allusion to the importance of the times which people would like. He takes an oath to the grain that you fed us. I think that's also interesting. Anyways, another thing about some historical symbolism I'd say here is like coming back to the flogging. Now you see that the whole stage erupts into a riot, right? And then after Bhim collapses and stuff, and everyone starts rioting. So interestingly, it is in the year 1920 that flogging was abolished in the British Empire. I mean, in India at least. I'm sure everywhere else too. So that actually is historically somewhat representing that fact, because yeah, India was in flames and there was like mass rioting everywhere, but I think they were just like they had enough, and like so this is actually 1920 is the exact year, and that's where the movie is based, that flogging was abolished, okay, by the British government in India. Okay, so here when Ram promises his village that he's going to get them guns, so he swears on Mother Godavari. So just to let you know, Godavari is that river there. It's one of the great rivers of India.
Karmanye vadhikar raste ma pade shukhadachana.
Okay, yeah. So here Ram, he recites a Sanskrit shloka, which is like a Sanskrit verse, like Karmandya Vadika Raste Ma Phale Shukhadachana. That's basically, this is from the Mahabharata. It's from a chapter in the Mahabharata called the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, it's one of the most holy texts in India. Okay, so and Bhim actually goes to rescue Ram, right, from the prison, right? So here's where we see a very close parallel to the story of Ramayana. So in the Ramayana, Ravan, who's the bad guy, he abducts Ram's wife, Sita, okay, and it kind of imprisons her. And Ram's best friend is Hanuman. Okay, he's called a monkey god or something, but he's a Neanderthal actually. He's a Neanderthal, right? So the moment you guys hear Neanderthals, you're thinking, okay, they're like people in a cave, cavemen, and like whatever. But that's not entirely true. In fact, it's not even true by even Western anthropological research papers. It's not true. So there are other species. 13,000 years ago, yeah, they walked shoulder to shoulder. They were intelligent beings. Like they call them Neanderthals. Some of them are like Denisovans and stuff like that. So he's one of those people. Yeah, they were well educated. They were civilized. They had their own cities and everything. And yeah, so that's the way to think about Hanuman. He's a what we would call like a Neanderthal. In fact, we all have some Neanderthal blood in us. I think everybody's got like 2%, and Indians have a little more. I think 4 to 5% of Neanderthal DNA or something like that. So I've just heard. So anyways, so Hanuman goes to Lanka. That's why you'll hear the word Lanka also like come up in the subtitles. So Lanka is the capital of Ravan. That's where Sita is. And he goes to save her because she's abducted. Goes as a messenger. So the first thing is that when he goes and meets her, Sita doesn't know who he is. So how is she supposed to trust him? So Hanuman gives her Ram's ring, okay, because Ram gives his ring, okay, so as a point of so that you can recognize that he is legit. It's the same way in this, like, that's why they use the same concept, like, the locket comes out. So it's very, very, there's a parallel directly you find from the Ramayana in that case, right? And so the thing is that in the real Ramayana, okay, firstly, Sita is not imprisoned in any kind of solitary confinement or anything like this. She's given a pretty spacious cottage in a beautiful forested area. It's called Ashok Vatika. Okay, and in the real Ramayana, what happens is Hanuman goes and says, okay, here Ram has sent me and let's go. And Sita's like, no. He's like, what? No, I'm not going. He says, you tell Ram to come himself and get me. Okay, so remember what I told you about women and their egos and how big a part they can play? So that happened there too. But anyways, luckily that didn't happen in this movie. So anyways, that's just the parallel. It's just synonymous to like this time Bhim is bringing back Ram to Sita. It's the other way around. But it's kind of, they've got a parallel going here.
More. And I'm also like I feel like I'm missing something. Like, I don't know what fire and water represents to this culture.
Yeah, sure.
Like that probably has a meaning that I'm not understanding.
Sure, I get that.
that forward from you. That's the thing. It's just my lack of understanding. I wish I knew culturally what these elements meant in India, because I'm sure that would serve a better understanding of the two of them.
Okay, yeah. So this is a big one, right? Fire and water, and what do they represent, like from the Indian perspective? So in a nutshell, fire represents the spiritual world, and water represents the material world. Okay, so fire is representing the force of the soul, and water represents the force of nature. Fine. And so in Indian philosophy, this is called Shiv Shakti, where Shiv is fire and Shakti is the water. Or it's also known as Purush Prakriti, where Prakriti literally is nature. It means nature. That's what symbolizes in water. And Purush is also known as man, but it also goes back. Puru also means things before us. So it refers to man and his fathers and his ancestors. And that's why you'll see that the entire goal for Ram's character is basically about his ancestors. He has a promise to keep to his ancestors, kind of thing, and his soul that's where he gets his willpower from. He's basically very strong souled. And Bhim's character, on the other hand, you'll notice is much more driven, where he keeps talking about, the land that gave me birth, and the trees that gave me air, and the water that gave me life. Everything is about nature, and Bhim is very much a force of nature in this, as you can see. So this is a very deep topic, but that's basically what it is. Okay, so Ram as fire represents the epitome, of the spiritual world, and Bhim as water represents the epitome of nature, or the material world. That's what this is. Now you can keep reading about it because it's a very big topic, but that's what they're showing here. Okay, now the symbol for fire, water, or Purush Prakriti is what they're trying to symbolize here, is actually just two inverted triangles, one on top of the other, and it looks like this. It's called the Shatkon. I was actually looking for the symbol, but I couldn't find it in the movie. Instead, what they've used is the yin-yang symbol, right? So this is Chinese philosophy, but a quick read in Wiki on the blurb of it. So I don't know much about Chinese philosophy, but it shows the same thing. It's the same concept of Purush Prakriti, Shiv Shakti, or fire, water. So a lot of Indian philosophies have left Indian shores over the last thousands of years. So there's a possibility that that's how they got it, but they haven't used the Shatkon representation. They've used the yin-yang representation for fire and water here. Okay, which is the spiritual and the material world. Okay, so in this scene, I'm sure most of you guys got this, but what I found really cool is the background score. Now the music and the lyrics are exactly the same as the original friendship song montage, right, that they had there. But the meaning suddenly changes a lot. It's like that Wonderwall song in which the first half and the latter half, they have the same lyrics, but they have entirely opposite meanings, the thing is that, so I know a lot of people are complaining that the lyrics and the subs in English, they look very stark and kind of rudimentary, and it's not cool. And I get that, because the right way to do it is you'll have to write your own lyrics in English, and it's not going to work if you try to translate. The truth is those subs don't even match the Hindi version, because I think they might be from the Telugu version. I don't understand Telugu, but they don't match the Hindi version either, because in the Hindi version they say things like Ajgar or Baaz ki dosti, which is literally the friendship between a falcon and a python. Okay, and then they say things like Jalad Bagi ki dosti, which is basically it's the friendship between an outlaw and a sheriff. Okay, but they don't use that here. They use different things like tiger hunter and all that. So it doesn't even match the Hindi lyrics. But anyway, I just want to say this is a pretty cool moment, where you have the same lyrics and you're like, yeah, what if the outlaw and the sheriff actually became friends and then, got together? Fuck yeah. So this is pretty cool. They completely use the same lyrics, but they change the way you think about it completely. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, okay, so in this scene, you'll notice that he's drinking water, where the vessel is not touching his lips, right? And most Americans and foreigners are probably thinking, yeah, it's just for style points, so that they can get the arrow to go between the pot or the cup and his lips. But that's not entirely true. That's not true at all. In fact, that is the traditional way of drinking water in India. Yeah. Now you won't see a lot of Indians drinking like this, especially in the cities or at restaurants, because it just looks a bit weird. It's just not normal. But yeah, in the villages and stuff, yeah, that's pretty much how people do drink water. Now, what's the reason behind it? I'm not sure. It's just a traditional way of drinking water. Maybe it's like for throat exercises or something. Okay, this is not the same as like filling your mouth with water and then gulping it down. No, it's continuous drinking. So like if you guys just tried this, you'll probably, you know, there'll be water in your nose, it'll be all over your face, it'll be on the floor, on your clothes. It's not easy. You can probably choke on it. So you need just a little bit of practice. But that is the traditional way that Indians drink water. And even now, if you go into Indian villages, and older people will drink water like that. Okay, so like now in the next sequence, we see Bhim, he goes to the statue, and first thought is that you think about it as, okay, this is just some kind of religious thing or just some belief system and stuff like that. And that could be possible. But in the traditional like Indian thought process, there's a good understanding that there are various energies. Like if you have the right idol, you know, like that statue of the right material in the right place, consecrated properly, and when devotees come and they pray, and there is some understanding that there are, you know, energies that actually reside within that area or in that statue, right? And this has been going on for thousands of years, and you won't believe the way people will line up for hours and hours just so that they can touch the statue or even see it. So this is actually, yeah, something. So that's what they're showing here. Actually, they're showing that, you know, there it could well be that, you know, Ram's soul, or like the Lord Ram, right? His soul or his spirit is residing in that, and that's why in the next scene when Ram Raju, the character, he comes out as an avatar of Ram. Exactly, that's the word. Because avatar means to descend, so it means like his soul has now entered into, you know, Ramcharan's body. And that's when you have that magnificent scene, like with the backdrop and the silhouette of Lord Rama, and you can literally like hear in the cinemas in India like people shouting like Jai Shri Ram at this point. So that's the way to look at it. It's like the statue and the idols, they do have, there is some understanding, but I don't know the entire science behind it, that there are energies that reside in these statues. Okay, and then this scene where we see Bhim, you know, out of the water, he goes and he sees Ramcharan's character like as Rama. He's not actually astounded that with all the lighting, and he's like, oh, that looks so cool. He's actually saying, I have seen Ram Avatar, I've seen the avatar of Ram. So the thing is that in the Indian traditional mindset system, right, it's like we have all our political problems and this problem and that problem. People are like, oh, we should do this policy and amend this law and that goes on forever, right? But the basic traditional Indian mindset is that we just need Ram Avatar to come now. Where they're all just waiting for Ram Avatar. Who's going to come back as Ram Avatar? You know, like who's going to come as the avatar of Ram? Because Ram is just going to solve all our problems. So, like the word for utopia in Indian languages is Ram Raja. It's the rule of Rama. Okay, that's utopia. You know, that's it. Like if Ram is king, then we have no problems. So that look that Bhim has on his face, it's that he has seen it with his own eyes. He has seen, you know, that Ram's soul has come down on earth. He's descended in human form, and the avatar of Ram is right in front of his eyes. So he's like, I have seen Ram Avatar.
His name's Rama, but you know when they're chanting Ram to him when they're doing the dance, they're clearly saying Ram then. Is that a bit like Steve and Steve, just an abbreviation of it?
I'm assuming so. Yeah, I'm guessing that's the case.
Okay, so yeah, this is a thing that I've seen in quite a few of the reaction videos. Is like, is it Rama or is it Ram? Is it Bhima or is it Bhim? So which is it? Truth is both are correct. Now I'll explain that why that happens. So like for example, Sanskrit and Hindi, they share the same script, okay? Just the way Latin and English kind of shares the same script. The thing is that in Sanskrit, the last consonant or syllable needs to be pronounced in full. So like in English, when you read RAM, you'd say Ram. Right, but say I told you that you're cutting out half the sound. You're cutting out half the sound of the last M. You need to pronounce it fully. So then you'll say, oh, it's Rama. Okay, that's the way Sanskrit is spoken. The last syllable needs to be pronounced in full, the last consonant or the last word of the letter. So that's why in Sanskrit it's Rama, Bhima. But in Hindi, when we speak, we just cut out half the sound of the last, and in most North Indian languages. In South Indian languages, they don't do that. So South Indians will say Rama, Bhima. North Indians will say Ram, Bhim. Or the Hindi belt or Hindi associated languages, they'll say Ram, Bhim. And South Indian will say Rama, Bhima. So you can say whichever. The absolute correct one would be the Sanskrit pronunciation, which is Rama and Bhima. But I say Ram and Bhim because that's the way I know it. Okay, so this scene is cool, like when we see Bhim emerge from the water, and I've seen a few reactions in which they say, okay, yeah, that's like Rambo style, right? Like, and maybe it's drawn some inspiration from that, but there is more to it than this, okay? So right now we have this person, his name is Bhim in the movie, the person on which he's based, which is the 20th century, early 20th century revolutionary Kumaram Bhim. His name is also Bhim, but Bhim is also a character from the Mahabharata, okay? So like, remember Mahabharata is basically a fight between two factions of brothers, right? So the Pandavas, which are 5 brothers, Bhim is the second eldest brother, and he is by far the strongest and one of the strongest people in India at that time. So the story goes, like this is the historical Mahabharata, is that when Bhim was a kid, he was a strong lad, but once he got into a tiff with his cousins, right? And they poisoned him, and then they threw him into a lake or a river. And he fell into a nest of snakes, and the snakes poisoned him then. And the way drugs work, like drugs are essentially poisons. Like if there's a poison inside you, you need a drug to cancel it. And that's also how traditional medicine in India also works. So the poison of the snakes cancel out the poison that he was already given. And when he emerged from the water, he was upgraded. He was stronger than he already was. So it's like he got upgraded to Bhim 2.0 after he came out of the water. So this is reminiscent of that. They're personifying that here, okay? I'm not saying that there's an avatar of Bhim has entered him or anything. It's just a personification that, when he emerges from the water, now he's also like, he's being shown as like in a very upgraded form. Okay, and one more thing we have to talk about here is that what's interesting is that for the Gond clan, the Gond tribes, Bhim is actually looked upon as an ancestor as well. As an ancestor. The actual Mahabharata Bhim is looked upon as an ancestor as well. And there is a story very much in the Mahabharata where Bhim, he's on exile, like all the brothers are sent in the forest on exile because for some backstory there was to it. So he actually marries a tribal lady and they have children. So there is some corroboration to that, but it's been passed down in the Gond oral histories for like thousands of years that Bhim is actually looked upon as an ancestor as well. So that's the other thing. And after this, we're followed by this motorcycle scene, right, in which he grabs a motorcycle and starts flailing it around like it's a toy or whatever. So the thing is, because now he's personified as Bhim, the Mahabharata Bhim. So the Mahabharata Bhim, okay, these warriors were all trained in all weaponry, but his weapon of choice was called the Gada, okay, which is called a mace in English. It's essentially a hunk of metal, and it's just a body smasher, but like in Bhim's hands, it's more like a body splatter, you could say. So like, obviously, like me as a viewer, I'm going to expect him to like, show him Bhim with his weapon of choice. So of course they couldn't get a mace here because that would look weird. So they basically used another prop. So they used a motorcycle to kind of, draw parallels to Bhim, using his weapon of choice, which would have been like the Gada or the mace back in the day. And so I think that was pretty cool too. It's probably something which I understand you guys wouldn't have drawn that correlation, but it's pretty well done. Yeah, so here there were some issues with the continuity problems in the end. They're like, how the hell did Bhim get inside that armory? But if you look carefully, there's a small clip where they're running really fast inside. So. Okay, so there is one scene that needs to be discussed, and that's like that car flipping scene, right? So it totally doesn't look realistic. It looks kind of weird, actually. And you wonder, because this movie's been very well edited. They've gone through this movie with a very fine comb. So they would have known that scene is like, it looks ridiculous. They didn't have to make it so over the top, like the guy's getting ejected at that speed from a flipping car. But if you look at some of the reactions, now just look at this.
Whoa! He's gonna catch the gun.
The fuck he is.
Yeah.
Home's got a blunderbuss.
Oh, I thought he was still in the air.
Oh, shoot.
Excuse me?
Excuse no!
Bring me those Tetris!
Oh, watch him catch the gun.
This is Mad Max?
Watch him catch the gun. No, you didn't.
He's in midair!
Sure.
Like this guy ejected!
Sure.
Shot them with an elephant.
Oh.
You got to get out of there.
Okay, so you kind of wonder, is it like the director just trying to like play some games, like, you know, like let the pressure valve release a bit, give some comedic relief, and then shut it back on immediately? Like, you can see the reactions, like you won't see this kind of ebb and flow of emotions within like a 5-second span. But I would actually be very interested in knowing what other directors are thinking about that one scene, because it's one thing we have to admit in this movie, that even if it's over the top, it's consistent, right? Except for that one scene. So I wonder what that was all about. I really don't have an answer, but I would love to know what other directors have to say about that. Okay, so this is one thing that foreign audiences will not get, but it's actually very important. So you see the attire that Bhim is wearing right now. So he's got his turban on, he's got a black top, and then he'll have a cummerbund, okay, like a red cummerbund, okay, just like a red lace or cloth to tie. And then he's toting a gun, and he's got a red tika, right? So this was the standard look for a freedom fighter, okay, in the 1920s and 30s, or the standard look for a freedom fighter. And this costume, and it was used all over India. And this costume or this attire was so demonized by the British, right? So it became to be associated with robbers, thieves, and dacoits, okay, which we call a daku in India. So this is the standard dacoit outfit. And this perpetuated even after India gained independence. Even then, the government of India, they kind of kept demonizing this attire, even through movies, through the way you study it, everything. That while I was growing up, or like even probably before this movie, if you just show somebody wearing this attire, the first thing that'll come to his mind, yeah, he's a dacoit, he's a robber, something like that. So it's interesting how they actually use the same attire, to just the same costume, to just like flip it around, and that's how powerful media can be. But what is interesting is that after this movie, I think this movie has completely, you know, it's done right to all the wrong that was done, and now I don't think people will ever associate this costume. Now it's going to be associated with the heroism that it always deserved to be.
Seen enough Michael Bay movies to wonder, am I watching propaganda right now?
Okay, yeah, so we get a lot of questions. Is this a propaganda movie? Well, straight away, it's not a propaganda movie. It cannot be, by definition, it cannot be a propaganda movie. Where do we get the term propaganda? Propaganda has been going on for a while. But in the modern era, we associate it with the Nazis and Hitler's left-hand man, or Goebbels' Minister of Information. But it is essentially where the government uses its state machinery to basically propagate an idea, or brainwash, or just get a point across, or to, you know, get people onto their side, right, using media and other things. But it has to be done by the state machinery. If anything, like the state machinery, the government of India has done nothing to propagate this film. As a matter of fact, they're dissing this film. They're not sending it for the Oscars. They're not promoting it in any way, form, means. No one has spoken anything about this movie. They haven't given any tax breaks on this movie. Nothing of the sort. So it is by definition that it cannot be a propaganda movie, because the government, if anything, is anti this movie. They're probably not even helping it in any way. So no, it's not a propaganda movie in any way.
Everyone gets a verse and it goes hard.
I don't know if this is me being terribly, like, ignorant, but where was Gandhi? Like, you see all those faces of the important people. Where was Gandhi?
That's weird. I don't...
Yeah, so good point. Why no Gandhi, right? Because that's the way we've been taught that Gandhi got independence for India, and he was the leader of the Indian independence struggle. Well, the truth is he wasn't really. He was, now it's well understood in India, and people just detest Gandhi because he was essentially a colonial stooge. He was propped up as something what we call controlled opposition. As a matter of fact, in this time, like 1920, the country was literally on fire. There were riots everywhere, and it was well understood that India is just going to get independence is just around the corner, maybe a couple of years or so. Gandhi was actually brought in just a few years before this. He actually delayed India's independence by about 20 years and subdued all the revolutionaries and all that stuff. And yeah, so that's basically it. So the point is that, yeah, Gandhi is kind of more or less not liked in India. It's well known that he was just a puppet and as a form of controlled opposition. So sleeping with the enemy kind. So I guess that's why they never put him on.
Portrayals that would be out of place in a Spanish soap opera, and portrayals of British people that make the Americans from Squid Game look like fucking Oscar-winning performances would.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about the acting. So yeah, you hear a lot of reviewers, like English-speaking ones, and they're not very impressed with the English acting, and they might say that, you know what, it's more a little caricatured, and maybe the dialogues don't have that much nuances in them and stuff like that. So let me tell you something. The English actors and the English acting and the screenwriting, everything in this movie for an Indian movie is like miles and miles ahead of anything that's ever happened before. Like historically, Indian directors and Indian cinema, they didn't really care like for the English actors. Like literally, I'm not lying, they would pick up like beach bums, like maybe even a Russian guy. They'll just pick him off the beach, you know, and he'll just come up there and he'll say something, yeah, for Mother Russia, and they're like, no, cut, you have to say British Empire, and he's like, okay, whatever. And that's literally how it was. You know, they'll pick up like Polish women, Slavic ladies who are trying to speak English with thick accents. They don't really give a shit. They just never cared. This time, they actually got like pedigreed actors, like, you know, people who took up acting as like a job, as a career, went to school. So that was so refreshing and so good to see. And these had like real dialogues. And honestly, like, you have to admit, they did a great job. Like, they got your emotions going. So they did exactly what they were meant to do. And then the extras also, the stuntmen, fantastic work. So I wouldn't have any complaints there. So let's talk a little bit about the Indian acting side, which obviously you guys won't be able to tell the nuances or who did a better job. We're talking about the main two protagonists. Now, both of them were absolutely outstanding. There's no doubt. Now, in the foreign eyes, like for Americans, you'll probably side with Ram Charan, right? He had the more dynamic role, the super cop. He was better looking, cool guy and stuff like that. But let me tell you that the role that NTR Jr. as Bhim has done is something I've never seen. This is absolutely amazing because he had the tougher role. Let's to start. He has to be the more rustic guy, and he got all the idiosyncrasies, the nuances, perfect. But not only that, this is in Hindi dubbing. He's actually spoken the dialogues himself. Now, this is something amazing because there is no way, not 1% that I could have possibly guessed that this was a South Indian person. Now, when we come to Ram Charan's Hindi, okay, Ram Charan fortunately gets to speak the more authoritative Hindi, right? So he's more direct. That's his role. So it becomes a little easier, and he does it well. Right? So it's like, imagine if a Hollywood actor has to speak a few sentences of French or Spanish, but he gets to say this authoritatively. So they're like very, very formal dialogue. So it's easier. But Bhim's character has to speak very informal Hindi, very, very rustic, very marketplace kind of Hindi. And he does it so well. That's literally like, can you imagine an English actor having to like, you know, speaking like German, but not the formal German, like the informal German, like if he's at a bar and people are watching a game of soccer, that kind of, it's just so impressive, and he does it so well. So I've never seen anything like this. Like I'm completely amazed that this guy, the NTR Jr., he's was full of talent, like really, really talented person. So I think like when the Indian critics talk about acting, definitely they're all going to say, yeah, NTR has done something that is just amazing in this movie. Okay, well, now to the final question. Is this movie a gateway to Indian cinema? Absolutely not. This is the elixir of Indian cinema. This is the final drug as of now. This is the greatest action epic drama that India has ever made. And it is, in my personal opinion, and I would say that it is the greatest action movie ever made. Epic drama. So the thing is, first we got to realize that whenever we go across different cinemas to different countries, the only ones that translate easy are the action epic dramas, right? And that works for Hollywood too. Hollywood is famous all over the world, not because of their rom-coms or social dramas. It's basically because of their action movies, right? So because that's easy to relate to, right? Like there are other good movies in India with social dramas and maybe comedies and whatever, but you're not going to enjoy them so much if you don't know the culture that much, and then it's very dependent on language and things like that. So we'll have to just take them all out. So we're talking just action movies, right? Epic action movies, and this is the greatest one that India has ever made. Now, you got to understand a few things about Indian cinema, and you might realize that you might wonder then how did it suddenly happen? Like they've been producing, honestly, I can tell you myself, trash for the last 40 years in terms of action movies. And suddenly, how did they come up with this wonderful thing? So the elements have always been there in Indian cinema. They've always been there. The thing is, the cinema industry in India is, I will say, it is almost purposely corrupted. It's been purposely sabotaged, so to just not create good content. Now, I'll explain this to you a little bit, how this works, okay, if you're interested. So in the 1960s, okay, it was called the golden age of Indian cinema, the golden age. And this is across all language industries in India: Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Bengali, Hindi, everything, okay, was world class, absolutely world class. The quality of direction, acting, dialogues, the stories, and the incorporation of music. Songs in those days were meant to not lengthen a movie; they were actually meant to shorten a movie. Like you see this friendship song here, right? Like that, it actually shortens it. Instead of showing them going to the bloody game and having fun and talking and becoming friends, no, they said, okay, you can just imagine it through a song, right? So it shortens the movie, it accelerates the movie, right? And everything was done to move the plot ahead. Okay, then what happened in the mid 70s, or basically in the 1980s, these guys, what they did is they all made their little silos, their islands, their language islands of movies, okay? It was all done purposely. So like in Bollywood or Hindi movies, they might make fun of South Indians, and then those South Indians, see, now we shouldn't watch their movies. It's all gamed, right? It's just like when the movie industry and the media, they get together and they create this nexus kind of a thing, it seems. And so the worst offenders, I would say, in creating these isolated pockets, and then they would create this weird fan culture, it's rabid fan culture, like jingoistic fanboys, very much like in Hollywood too. In that respect, where the Avengers, Marvels, they try to addict you on, they get you on early, same way. So they create this weird superstardom culture where they literally think their stars are like gods. They actually do. So the worst offenders are the Telugu industry and the Tamil industry. This is what they did the most. Now I'm thinking this Kannada film industry with some movies, they're creating that same kind of a fanboy jingoistic culture. So but the Telugu and the Tamil are historically been the worst. And then the South Indian movies and the Hindi movies, they won't even dub in other languages. Okay, so they'll say, you know what, instead of competing, let's just keep our little bases and just make money, and we can just produce garbage, and these guys will just watch it, right? And they did, right? So the last 40 years or so, that's basically how Indian cinema has been working. So what's happened now is with Rajamouli, he has actually said that in one of his trailers I saw. He says, bringing back the glory of Indian cinema. So now the songs, he said, we're not going to have stupid songs just coming in for no reason. And the way people always complain about Bollywood songs, what are they doing in movies? Indians complain too. Growing up, whenever you see a song, you fast forward. And 95% of the songs are garbage. You don't even remember them. They're shit songs, actually. You also have to remember that 2,000 movies are released in India every year. I think more than 90% are flops. They lose money. That's the first question you'll ask, is if you saw all these movies in one room, you'd be like, who's paying for this shit, right? And it's just the same in Hollywood. Tell me, would you put $300 million to make the kind of bullshit movie that you see in Hollywood? Of course you wouldn't. Something's up, right? So it's the same concept pretty much. But it's the same thing in India too. So most of these movies, that they know they're going to flop. They don't really care either. So anyways, what Rajamouli has said, because I saw this in one of his trailers, it says bringing back the glory of Indian cinema. So now they're going back, and the way Indian cinema was envisioned to be, the way music is, the way songs are, the way dance is, the way your emotions flow. So it all comes from something called Natya Shastra, right? Like that's how when the dramatists in the traditional Indian concept, right? So this is basically like bringing back like the movies of the 60s. So there was one action blockbuster movie which was released about 45 years ago. Its name is Sholay. So that was true to the concept of Indian cinema. It did have a few problems with the government propaganda coming in, but it won't affect your enjoyment of watching it. If you want to see what the Indian system of what a action blockbuster is, then you should watch Sholay. That's the only other thing. But it's not going to be as enjoyable because it doesn't have the same quality of graphics. But that movie was such a big hit. Everybody in India knows about it even now. Such a big hit that it ran like full house for like years in some theaters. You know, there were like newspaper reports that there's like that movie ran for 10 years in a single screening cinema hall. That's all he did. He just ran that one movie for 10 years, you know, paid through his children's education, paid his mortgage just by, you know, running one movie. So that's also true. So that movie is a super duper. Everyone in India has heard about it. So if you want to understand the concept, conceptually, what the thematic concept of Indian cinema is when it comes to like a action blockbuster, then the only other movie I can recommend is Sholay, but it's 45 years old. But you'll see some similarities in the way the characters are developed, in the way the moral dilemmas and the conflict and all these things are developed. You'll see some similarities in that and this. So I think that's what Rajamouli is saying, is that we're bringing back the glory of Indian cinema. And Rajamouli's father, from what I use, also in the movie industry. So he obviously has a very good taste, like when it comes to the older movies. He knows exactly the way movies were supposed to be. Instead of so the last 40 years has just been divisive politics, creation of these fanboy jingoistic cultures, creation of this like unwarranted superstardom. Like it's weird, right? And not very nationalistic. They're not trying to join the country. They're not trying to make like movies that, you know, highlight Indian culture that all Indians can watch and be happy about. But it's more been like, you know, let's just game this whole thing and, you know, whatever. So I think there might be a rebound going on. But if it does, yeah, definitely I would say Indian cinema has the capability of making at least 4 movies like this every year, 4 to 5, easily, because they have the talent, they have the stories, there's so much material, they have the actors, they have everything. The question is, will they, right? So let's hope they do. But yeah, so is this a gateway to Indian cinema? No. I mean, if you really want to understand Indian cinema, like the concept of how the story goes, the ebbs and flows, how it plays with your emotions, you'll have to watch movies from the 60s, and I don't think that's going to be so easy. So, but otherwise, yeah, I don't think there's anything else that will even like, you know, be anywhere close to this movie right now in the recent past or anything. So that's it then, guys. Okay, so this comes to an end here. I hope you enjoyed it. It's obviously for the diehard RRR fans. And yeah, do like, share, subscribe. And if you liked it, just comment something. Maybe I can answer some comments. Okay, then take care. Have a good day. Bye.